Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Although Levi's plan was sound, and he seemed confident in it, Jamal was still ordered to use his spiritual arrow to scout around them every once in a while. After all, Mantis wasn't the only one in the forest. Fortunately, no one appeared in his arrow's field of vision. When he relayed the news, Shia ordered everyone to start searching the area for natural treasures again. She still hadn't lost hope, even when the center of the forest turned out to be a bust. Since the forest was quite humongous with hills, lakes, and rivers, it would be hard to meet Shia's party randomly, although Mantis' party had more than 100 daywalkers. In addition, everyone was too focused on finding natural treasures to bother themselves with antagonizing Shia's party. Mantis couldn't make such an order when the contract details involved only finding the treasures. Thus, hours went by in peace, and before long, the sun was showering everyone with its final rays of light. Prepare your nightwear straps and light sticks. Mantis ordered with an irritated look, knowing that it was near impossible to find Shia anymore unless they dropped everything and completely focused on her. As the night veil fell over the forest and the moon cast its gentle light from the slight gaps of the clouds, only small dots of light were seen spread out across the forest. Sometime later, "Is it just me, or is the forest somewhat too peaceful?" Masai murmured while looking around him, not spotting a single roaming nightcrawler. "Are you doubting my agency's capabilities?" Mantis frowned coldly. "You think we're some kind of second-rated agency that doesn't clear the any?" Scritch, scritch. Suddenly, a faint rustling noise echoed in everyone's ears akin to tiny legs skittering over dried leaves. "Sheesh." Mantis silenced everyone with a finger near his mouth and leaned closer to the noise. As he focused on it, it started to get louder and louder until it resounded akin to the thundering steps of 1,000 army. Then they appeared a sea of horrific big spiders charging in their direction, covering their entire field of sight. "Rue, run. Are you absolutely petrified?" Mantis let out a high-pitched scream while sprinting at the top of his speed in the opposite direction of the spiders. "What the hell? How come there are so many spiders?" Masai and the rest of the squad didn't linger for even a moment as they took off after Mantis while summoning their signature weapons. All of them shared similar expressions: horror, disbelief, and confusion. Unfortunately, no one was there to clarify their questions, as this exact scenario was repeating across the entire forest. Meanwhile, Shia's party was still working tirelessly, turning everything upside down, but to no avail. "I'm starting to think that those flowers have gone extinct." Arthur wiped his forehead in annoyance. "They're called treasures for a reason, Arthie. If they were..." Levi's smile suddenly turned upside down after spotting a bizarre moving spiritual wave at a rapid speed. When he focused hard on it, he finally managed to see some distinctive features of spiders. He stood up immediately and warned with a solemn tone, "An uncanny number of spiders are approaching us. We have to leave now." "Wait, what? Spiders? It can't be. This region isn't known to harbor any spider archetype." Sergio and Jamal commentated in confusion, but Levi had no plans to explain the situation. He called for his brother, and Arthur swiftly took hold of him, giving him a piggyback. Then he sprinted in the opposite direction, not waiting for anyone to react. When SH*T hit the fan, the Larson brothers only cared about protecting each other. After Shia saw his extreme reaction and knew that he wasn't the type to mess around, she swiftly summoned her weapon and took off after them. This left Jamal and Sergio to glance at each other in a daze for a few seconds. But then, their ears picked up on the creepy, rustling sound, an unfamiliar noise in a silent forest. "Wait for us." Scared shitless, they dropped everything and chased after their party, regrouping in no time. "Art, no, save me." Before Shia could ask Levi about what he saw in detail, a distant symphony of cries and screams engulfed the forest, sending chills coursing down everyone's spines. "What's going on?" Arthur asked, agitated. How the F***CK will I know? Shia replied with a grim look while glancing behind her, noticing thousands of crimson dots through the darkness. They were too close to their comfort. Meanwhile, many thoughts were roaming through Levi's mind, trying his best to keep his cool in such a dangerous situation. As he listened to the agonizing and despairing screams echoing across the forest, he understood that it was impossible for the timing to be this perfect, that all of them were ambushed at once. This made him realize that the spiders were following orders and that this entire ambush was organized by an intelligent entity. In public records, the harrowing Forest Shadow Castle nest was under the leadership of a nightcrawler from the Groot Goat archetype, which meant most of the nightcrawlers under him should be of a similar archetype for easier control. Levi understood that nightcrawlers respected each other's authority following two options. Either they were of the same archetype, or the tier difference was beyond 3. In simpler terms, a Tier 4 Nightcrawler could command with absolute authority a Tier 1 Nightcrawler of any species. But if they were of the same species, just being 2 tiers higher would give them the same absolute authority. That's why most Nightcrawlers' nests were usually filled with similar archetypes for easier management. This means those spiders didn't belong to the nest and are under a whole different entity. In other words, Levi's skin felt cold all of a sudden after it finally hit him. We are being hunted by a lurker spider queen. Even Levi, who was almost always composed and fearless, couldn't help but feel dread creeping up on his heart. He had read that lurker nightcrawlers were minimum tier 5, since they needed to be powerful to protect themselves from other nightcrawlers too. To be hunted by a rogue tier 5 nightcrawler? This was scarier than going on an expedition. "We have to leave the forest now," he shouted, his face as pale as a sheet of paper. "Did you find something?" Shia frowned. Just as Levi was about to give her a brief version of his findings, his spiritual vision detected a pincer assault of another wave of spiders, coming from the front and sides. It was like everywhere he looked, the only thing in his field of vision was disorganized, shadowy spiritual waves. Though the numbers varied extensively. "We are surrounded. Head east and prepare for battle." Hearing Levi's orders, Arthur didn't even question his brother. He changed his direction abruptly, using a boulder to kick off it, and launched himself with minimized momentum loss. Such a maneuver would have ruined any normal person's knees. But Arthur's muscles weren't purely for strength purposes, as he was extremely flexible too. Shia and the others swiftly caught up to them and took the lead, forming the same battle formation with the Larson brothers in the center. In a few moments at best, everyone finally saw what Levi warned them about as a dozen giant, hideous, hairy spiders entered their illumination strip range. "It's flesh-eating spiders." Sergio's expression turned ugly immediately. He knew that those little bastards loved eating the flesh of their prey while still alive. Most nightcrawlers prioritized killing their prey first to ensure a comfortable feasting experience, but those monsters couldn't care less. "Pierce through them," Shia shouted. Jamal. Knowing what she wanted, Jamal pulled the bow from his back and aimed at the biggest gathering of spiders in front. Then, he fired an arrow of concentrated spiritual energy at them. Piercing shock dart. Before his agitated holler could reach the ears of his party members, the arrow pierced through the first spider, the second, the third, and everything in its path. Boom! Then, a split second later, a thundering shockwave was emitted in its path, hurling the closest spiders away and throwing them against trees. The hell! Arthur watched with his jaw dropped at the cleared path before them. During most of their battles in the forest, Shia took care of everything, leaving Jamal to use his energy purely to scout. Only now did he realize that Jamal was capable of carrying his own weight too. The path is clear, but the other waves are joining together. Levi shared with a solemn tone. "If they were to catch us, it won't end pretty." The constant cries and screams of other daywalkers supported Levi's claim, leaving everyone with ugly expressions at such a disturbing development. "This is beyond the norm. We have to call for reinforcement." Without waiting for permission, Sergio requested Astra AI to declare an emergency and request reinforcement from the closest outpost. Although they were in a private agency, They were entitled to receive governmental aid in such emergencies. Alas, the answer he received drained the color out of his chubby face. Astra services are offline. Please reconnect. Astra services are offline. Please reconnect. Each time he called for her, the same message resounded in his ear. Not daring to believe it, Sergio pressed a button on his earpiece, and a tiny hologram appeared at the side of his vision. When he saw an X mark on the signal bars, his soul almost left his body. "Did you call for help?" Shia inquired. The signal is off." Sergio stuttered, pure dread engulfing his expression. The moment everyone heard him, they swiftly checked their own devices and ended up with the same discovery. Someone is jamming the signal. Levi felt a chill course his spine after realizing that their situation was far from a random hunting mission by a lurker spider queen. This ambush was orchestrated with either someone on the inside, or the lurker spider queen must have landed on a signal jammer. In both scenarios, it didn't look good for them. "Keep going east. The moment we put a decent distance, we will summon our mounts and leave this place," Shia ordered coldly, not showing an ounce of panic. If it was up to her, she would have already summoned her eagle and at least helped the Larson brothers get out of the forest. Unfortunately, the summoning of totem mounts required 15 seconds minimum while using low-graded ceiling totems. At the moment, they didn't even have a couple of seconds to scratch their heads. While every single squad was trying their best to reach out to their private agencies, their families, or authorities to rescue them, Nelvas was seen standing at the highest point in the forest, the destroyed shaft of the wooden black umbrella. He was crouching with his elbows placed on his knees while carrying a small silver device in his right hand. The device was square-shaped and had a long antenna, beeping once every couple of seconds. How did Diriwibra get her hands on this? Nelvas wondered while toying with the device. He had heard from his previous lord that such devices were banned by the human race since they could do more than disrupt their tower signals. If fallen into the wrong hands, they could be engineered to shut down electricity networks, power sources, defensive systems such as the sun disk, and more. That's why those devices were halted from production many years ago, and anyone found developing or in possession of one would be thrown in jail for a very long time. I know she's a Tier 5 powerhouse, but still. Nelvas rubbed his long goatee thoughtfully, knowing that it was extremely difficult for even high-ranked daywalkers to get their hands on this device. She must have her own network within the human race. Nelvas narrowed his eyes. Is killing that girl part of the feast, or does it go much deeper? Soon, Nelvas shook his head, realizing that he was snooping into matters that might get him killed. He returned to his main task, which was placing the signal jammer at the highest point of the forest to ensure that no one would get a connection. After he was done, he looked in the direction of Shia's party and smiled sinisterly. Boom, boom, thud. On a different side of the forest, Mantis and his squad mates were seen fighting for their life after getting surrounded from all sides by the spider's army. Unlike Shia's party, they had no Levi to alert them in advance about the spider's sneaky ambushes. Sure, they had a scout in the party, but his abilities worked similarly to Jamal's. He needed to be stationary and have it active all the time, which was impossible considering the exertion it takes on his energy levels. Monir, help out Masai. Don, use your goddamn ultimate innate ability already. Nikiai, stop F***king saving your assault totems and deal with your side. We have to break through. Fast. Mantis positioned himself on top of a tree above the chaotic battlefield underneath. He was scanning the entire field and giving out orders nonstop, helping the squad possess some form of teamwork. Unfortunately, he could see that his efforts were for naught, as the sea of spiders was simply never-ending. The moment his team dealt with a group, they were jumped by 3. F***CK, F***CK, F***CK. Why the hell is this happening in my first leading mission? Even the signal is cut off. Am I being set up? Mantis' expression kept turning ugly by the second, understanding that he would be responsible for everyone's death, even when this situation wasn't his fault. All due to the nocturnal contracts having a life insurance term in case a hired daywalker died in a mission or an expedition. He expected a couple of casualties here and there once he signed over 100 daywalkers, But as he listened to the nonstop pained cries in the forest, he could tell that their situation was much worse than he could imagine. "What do you think, Tina?" Mantis asked for his partner's opinion. "Advisor Alaric will kill you if you don't die fighting here." Mantis' expression turned desperate as he listened to his contracted nightcrawler, who resembled a humanoid curvy praying mantis. She had a slender figure covered in emerald green chitin, while her eyes glowed with a bioluminescent light. "You can't even run away on your own. You have to act as a hero and save as many as possible. This is the only way to ensure you receive minimum punishment, maybe even rewarded once an investigation carries through." Mantis knew she was right. If it was possible, he would have already dipped, leaving everyone at the mercy of their destiny. Sadly, the neural lens was still recording everything and storing it until the connection returned. In other words, if he were to run away from his responsibilities, he would be exposed one way or another unless he destroyed his entire squad's neural lens devices. This left him with two choices: either die trying to be a hero or survive and be punished as a villain. F***CKME. Mantis summoned his signature weapon. It resembled a praying mantis forearms with thousands of sharp, deadly teeth bent at a striking position, 80 to 100 degrees. Then, with a look of utter despair mixed with anger, he pounced at the biggest gathering of spiders while shouting, "Praying mantis arts! 1,000 cuts!" His body suddenly disappeared midair, turning into a shadowy mirage with hundreds of green blades appearing here and there. Each time a blade appeared, a spider was sliced in half or had its head severed. Slice! 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 The rest of the squad watched in astonishment as Mantis single-handedly took down more than 20 spiders in no time, creating a path to freedom from corpses. "What are you standing for? Follow me." Not waiting for anyone, Mantis took the lead and charged headfirst into the incoming next wave of spiders, his body and weapon already tainted with sticky, nasty juices. But he couldn't care less. His bloodshot eyes reflected nothing but a strong desire to survive at all costs. While the 100 Daywalkers were fighting for their lives in the depths of the harrowing forest, peaceful silence engulfed the outpost. Most of the traffic in outposts was related to Daywalkers. Since the majority had already departed, the outpost was mostly occupied by government staff and guards. "Mickey, keep watch. I'm going for a walk." The smoker guard shared lazily while standing up from his chair. "But Sir Ling," Mickey gulped a mouthful. "You were assigned to guard the outpost as a disciplinary punishment. If you leave, they can track your location and accuse you of breaking your penalty." "Ah, how bothersome." Ling rubbed his eyelids and said, "Fine, I will just smoke on top of the tower." But before Mickey could add anything, Ling took a single step forward and suddenly disappeared, leaving behind him a mere cool breeze like he was never there. Mickey lifted his head and gazed at the top of the sun disk tower with an odd expression. "So freaking cool," Mickey murmured. If only he wasn't reckless and insubordinate, he would have been promoted to a Gove. I am not in a position to judge anyone. Meanwhile, at the highest point of the sun disk tower, Ling was seen sitting with one hand above his knee while dangling the other leg. He was trying to light up a cigarette, but it was too windy at such a height. "Halt!" With a single order, the wind suddenly froze around him. Then, Ling ignited the cigarette in a single attempt and took a deep breath until the tip turned bright red. Immediately after he exhaled a cloud of smoke, the wind unfroze and took it away. "That's the good stuff." Ling showed a cozy smile as he gazed at the magnificent view around him. However, as his eyes landed on the harrowing forest, he couldn't help but knit his eyebrows in confusion. "Mal, are you seeing what I am seeing?" A pitch-black cat emerged from his tie and sat on top of his shoulder. She had long, thick whiskers, making her resemble an old beardy cat. When she glanced lazily in the direction of the harrowing forest, her dark slit opened up widely, reflecting an abnormal scene. A gigantic, almost invisible web of walls surrounded the entire forest borders and seemingly grew taller each second, desiring to meet at the top. If it weren't for the moonlight being reflected once in a while by the web threads, no one would be able to see them even if they were close. Whoa, it's a death cocoon. Mao clicked her tongue. Your little fella's luck sure is rub. Before she completed her sentence, Feng Ling had already taken off towards the harrowing forest with an icy grimace. He was kicking the wind like he was bouncing off solid surfaces. Each kick sent him flying for more than hundreds of meters. His speed was enough to put even Shia's eagle to shame. Why the hell is there a lurker spider queen nearby? And how come no one has reached out for reinforcement? Although Feng Ling knew that the moment the death cocoon appeared, it was already too late to ask for reinforcement, he was still confused. Is she in possession of a signal jammer? Or did she already slaughter everyone before they can make contact? He doubted the latter was true, as he knew that lurker spider queens seldom made their move personally unless threatened or forced. They always leave it to their armies of spiderlings. This made him assume that she was using a signal jammer, which was going to change the whole narrative of this ambush. Astra, call for a code purple to the capital. Location, harrowing forest. I might go offline soon. The moment he finished his report, Feng Ling narrowed his eyes and increased his speed to the limit, leaving behind mere windy figures. Maybe it's not too late. I might save a few. As this thought took root, an image of Levi surfaced in Feng Ling's mind. It wasn't of their last meeting at the gate, but of the first time he had ever met him. The day he was still an anti-sleepwalker officer and responded to an abnormal electrical activity in a house within Tamara's upper neighborhood. He could never forget that day and the horror he had seen in that house. I might save him this time. A few minutes ago, Shia's party was still being hunted by an ever-growing army of spiders, who never seemed to get tired or lost. Although Levi was acting as the perfect radar, helping them avoid the largest group of spiders and choose the weakest ones to pierce through, the morale was at an all-time low. Every one of them knew that it was going to be extremely challenging to reach the eastern borders of the forest without exhausting every bit of their stamina. The flesh-eaters have heat vision. We might never leave enough distance to summon the mounts in peace. Levi frowned. We have to change our plan. I am all ears for suggestions, Shia responded while grasping tightly onto a necklace with a flaring sun symbol. We need 15 seconds at minimum to summon the mounts. Levi glanced at the spiritual wave behind them and guessed. I assume 30 meters are separating us. Based on their constant speed, if we were to stop, they would reach us in 5 seconds. This means we have to create a distraction good enough to buy us more than 10 seconds. What kind of distraction are you talking about? Sergio inquired while sweating heavily, his big belly flapping all over the place. Although he looked unhealthy and unathletic, he was somehow capable of keeping up with the squad's speed. In fact, he was doing much better than Jamal, who was huffing and puffing like he was going to collapse at any given moment. When it came to daywalkers, appearances were deceiving. We need something strong enough to break them off the lurker spider queen's authority. Levi said he had already updated them about the true intentions of those spiders and the actual gravity of their situation. Knowing that a lurker spider queen was hunting after them was enough to scare anyone straight. Thus, even when it looked like Levi had taken leadership of the group, none of them dared to complain. The only thing coursing through their minds was to survive this hellhole. Purified sunlight, Shia shared sternly. If we threw at them all of our growth totems and luminous snacks, I'm certain they will fight amongst each other to eat them. My thoughts exactly. Levi nodded in approval. He understood that only purified sunlight was capable of breaking low-tiered night crawlers from their master's authority briefly, especially if it was in abundance. It was like putting a delicious snack in front of a starving dog who hadn't eaten in many days. Even if he was well-trained, his survival instincts would instantly take the wheel. F***CK, even our growth totems? Sergio's expression turned ugly as he glanced at his backpack. His reaction was understandable when considering that those growth totems were used by daywalkers to accelerate feeding their shadow life seeds with sunlight. The shadow life seeds were in every nightcrawler, and they were the singular organ responsible for their lifespan, evolution, intelligence, strength, life, and death. It was everything to a nightcrawler, and now it had become everything to humans as well. But more on that later. Fine. Save them. The spiders will surely enjoy adding them as snacks while they feast on your corpse. Shia said coldly while letting go of the necklace. Damn it. If this doesn't work, my vengeful soul will haunt this forest for eternity. Sergio seemed on the verge of tears as he reached out to his backpack, pulling 2 pouches. One was filled with luminous snacks, and the other with growth totems. Jamal brought out his own, and they handed them to Shia mid-sprint. Shia evaded a tree and glanced at the contents of the pouches. When she noticed the quantity and quality of the growth totems, her eyelids twitched. Are you withholding? No? What? Never mind, this is good enough. She poured everything into a single pouch, and then she pressed them together, activating all the dormant luminous snacks and totems, causing the pouch to shimmer brightly. She traded glances with everyone, and when she saw Arthur tap on Levi's hand, she turned around and threw the pouch behind them. Prepare your night mounts. Sergio and Jamal pulled their ceiling totems and held them tightly, awaiting Levi's call with looks of expectancy. Although Levi had no vision of the pouch, he focused on the movement of the spiritual wave of spiders. Meanwhile, the sea of spiders was as terrifying as ever, jumping on trees and walking on each other, uncaring about anything else but the moving humanoid heat auras before them. It was like they were on a mission, and they would not stop until they fulfilled it. But just as it seemed like their resolve was unchanging, a sudden, beautiful brilliance appeared in their sight. Immediately after they saw the light, their shadow life seed tingled like crazy, sending electrifying shockwaves across their entire system. Then, every single spider in the vicinity of the brilliant light let out a unified screech and charged toward it like they were injected with steroids. The first spider to arrive sank its giant fangs into the pouch and swung its head, cutting the pouch in half and hurling all the activated luminous snacks and growth totems everywhere. The spiders halted their sprint and started fighting over every single piece, even biting each other to snatch it. It worked. Summon the mounts. Go, go. Levi notified his squad the moment he saw the great disturbance amongst the spiders' army. Shia, Sergio, and Jamal were clever enough to throw the ceiling totems tens of meters away from them after uttering the incantation to ensure no second was lost. The wooden ceiling totems turned brighter and bigger in midair, and even when they landed, the process still continued. When Shia's party arrived near them, they counted the seconds with held breaths, waiting impatiently for the ceiling totems to shatter. We will make it. The spiders are still fighting over the purified sunlight. Levi eased their worry while gazing at the disturbed spiritual wave. As he claimed, the ceiling totems shattered after a few rough moments, unveiling the 3 night mounts to the world. Cairo, you ugly bastard. I never thought I will be happy. However, before Sergio could take a single step forward, a sudden aggressive whooshing sound was heard from above, attracting everyone's attention. The moment they lifted their heads, it was already too late. Boom! Nelvas fell from a sky akin to a meteor amidst the summoned mounts. Arthur and the rest were forced to reflexively shield their heads as they got hurled in different directions from the powerful shockwave. Timber, rocks, dirt, mud, everything was launched at a terrifying speed after them, bombarding them mid-flight. Despite the sudden assault and pain, Arthur instinctively twisted in midair, causing Levi to take the hit on his back, but it spared him from crashing into the solid trunk of an oak tree. Thud! Arthur flexed his muscles to the best of his ability, but the force was strong enough that it still knocked the air out of his chest. As he fell to the ground, his bloodshot eyes protruded from their sockets while his mouth was wide open. Saliva coming out uncontrollably, but no air was coming in. Just sharp exhales as he held onto his stomach tightly. Arthur, as Levi heard his brother's dry gasps, he completely forgot the scorching pain on his back after the bombardment. He placed his hand on his brother's chest and started telling him to breathe slowly while massaging it, knowing that it wouldn't help much. Meanwhile, Shia, Jamal, and Sergio had it better than them, as the moment they were hit by the shockwave, each one used their defensive innate abilities to protect themselves. Shia surrounded herself with crystallized blood armor. Jamal utilized a skin-tight spiritual barrier. And lastly, Sergio's fatty skin hardened into rocks. They immediately recovered and entered a protective formation, putting Arthur and Levi in its center. When Shia saw what happened to them, her expression turned bloodthirsty. "Boys, are you all right?" Arthur made an okay gesture with his hand while taking deep breaths, appearing like he was about to die any second. "Don't mind us and focus on him. He must be a Tier 3 Nightcrawler," Levi warned solemnly as he gazed at the terrifying spiritual gray aura in front of him. He had learned long ago that the intensity of spiritual auras defined the tier/rank of a Nightcrawler or any of the walkers. He used a simple technique to figure out a Nightcrawler's tier. If it was weak and feeble, it must be a Tier 1 Nightcrawler. If it was intense but contained in the figure, it must be a Tier 3 Nightcrawler. If it was in between, neither strong nor weak, it belonged to a Tier 2 Nightcrawler. As for the rest of the high-tiered Nightcrawlers, he had only seen upper-ranked Daywalkers' spiritual auras, and it was always wild or contained to perfection. When Shia and the rest heard that they might be dealing with a Tier 3 Nightcrawler, their shoulders tensed up while eyeing the cloud of dust in front. Nelvas' wavy shadow reflected behind the dusty cloud. He lifted his hands slowly, and then, with a single clap, the dusty cloud was cleared out, exposing an unsightly scene. The white-feathered eagle, the shadowy horse, and the blue-furred wolf were lying in a puddle of blood, torn flesh, and guts spilling everywhere. Not a single twitch was spotted. They were utterly decimated inside a massive crater created by Nelvas. "Sadly, you little children ain't going anywhere," Nelvas said casually while stretching his shoulder. "Mira," Shia ignored him. Her crimson-red eyes were affixed on the brutal state of her dearest mount. She didn't need to hear her heartbeats to know that Mira was gone. The moment she died, the contractual link between them was cut off, causing the ink tattoo on her back to erase itself. This happened to Sergio and Jamal as well, leaving their expression to turn gloomy. "Sergio, Jamal, keep the brothers safe and buy me some time," Shia uttered coldly while walking towards Nelvas, holding her crescent-bladed glaive with both hands. Seeing her current state, Sergio and Jamal knew that she was about to go all out. While they didn't know if it would be enough to deal with such a terrifying Tier 3 Nightcrawler, they could only put their trust in her and fulfill their part. "Jamal, cover my back." Sergio extended his arm to the side, summoning a petrified cracked stone mace with a gleaming green light. The moment he tightened his grip on it, his skin started turning into rock, as well like he was touched by the curse of Medusa. The transformation didn't stop until his entire body was armored from top to bottom with a rocky skin, leaving only his eyes. Though he looked like a statue carved from stone, his movement was smooth as he swung his mace and rested it on his shoulder. Then, without an ounce of hesitation, Sergio charged toward the spider's army on his own, desiring to intercept them before they could get close and pincer his party. "Sergio," Levi murmured as he watched Sergio's minuscule aura rushing toward an ocean of damnation. Although he was giving him *T from the moment they met, Levi never took it to heart, as he could tell that Sergio was simply a distrustful person. Whether he was blind or not had nothing to do with his behavior, since his brother had been taking the same *T from him. But with time, his bad attitude lessened, and he started treating them as true members of his party after realizing that they were quite reliable even for citizens. "Russell, Russell." The moment the spiders finished feasting on the growth totems and luminous snacks, they switched their attention to the closest heat signal to them. They saw only Shia, Levi, Arthur, Jamal, and Nelvas. Just as they let out an ear-piercing screech and tried to kickstart their chase, a deep, rough voice resounded in their ears. Dark stone arts, petrifying touch. Boom, boom, boom. The armored titan charged right through the biggest group of spiders and started smashing his mace barbarically. Each blow didn't just brutally blow up a spider, but tainted it with a green light that caused its exoskeleton to get petrified into stone. The broken-off cursed limbs and other body parts were sent flying everywhere, spreading the curse to anything they touched. This created great chaos amidst the army of spiders as all of them tried to attack and bite off Sergio, uncaring about the petrification curse. But Sergio knew what he was doing. His armored body protected him from the spiders' bites, their long, sharp fangs merely grazing against the stoned skin. Yet, the spiders were absolutely relentless, jumping one after another like they were part of a suicide mission. Although the petrification curse and Sergio's constant swinging were causing great damage, in the end, he found himself buried under a mountain of spiders. This hindered his movement greatly, making it extremely difficult to swing his mace. Just when it looked like he would be buried to death, a piercing spiritual arrow appeared out of nowhere and penetrated the mountain of spiders. Kaboom! The following shockwave hurled all the spiders away, freeing Sergio at last. He glanced once in Jamal's direction and told him to keep them coming while he charged back to chaos. So strong. Arthur watched with a widened mouth at the duo's powerful synergy, having no idea how to react. They did nothing but repeat the process over and over again. Yet, it was enough to keep an army of spiders busy. They won't be able to keep this for long. On the other hand, Levi's expression was as grim as it could be. While he had no idea what was Sergio doing to keep the spiders occupied without dying, he knew it must be consuming an insane amount of solar energy. Usually, this wouldn't be much of a problem since most daywalkers packed a generous amount of growth totems to refuel their shadow life seeds when their stored solar energy was exhausted. However, they had just wasted all of them for nothing. It was even worse for Jamal, as his abilities were utilizing spiritual energy, which was a much more difficult source of energy to refuel. In other words, it was just a matter of time before Sergio's armor collapsed and Jamal started firing blank arrows. But they were told to buy time for Shia, and they would do it even if they collapsed in the process. Whoosh, whoosh. Meanwhile, Shia and Nelves weren't sitting idle. They were already trading blows tens of meters away from Levi. Somehow, Shia was matching up amazingly against Nelves, even though she was still a junior daywalker. How strong! No wonder none of the ambushes worked. Nelves raised an eyebrow as he blocked the crescent blade with his right arm. While he wasn't cut or even scratched, he could feel the potent force behind the swing. My normal attacks are doing nothing to him. Shia narrowed her eyes. Bleeder, we have to use it. Go for it. I have collected a decent amount of blood. Bleeder smiled coldly. The moment she received his approval, Shia bounced away from Nelves and brought her crescent blade near her wrist. Then, she sliced the vein under Nelves' startled look, causing a fountain of blood to spew everywhere. Uncaring about everyone's stunned looks, Shia brought her wrist to her lips and started drinking her blood, causing her eyes to turn completely red and her heartbeats to accelerate beyond the human norm. The moment her vision turned bright red with only Nelves in sight, Shia wiped her lips with the right sleeve, smearing her cheek red. Then, she dropped the weapon shaft and held her crescent blade from a small handle in the center. I'm about to get close and intimate. Shia showed a sinister grin as she uttered, Mantra blood arts, blood frenzy. The instant the last word left her mouth, Shia appeared right next to Nelves' left thigh, hunching akin to a blood demon. Then, she sliced the femoral artery, which was the main artery of the thigh. This time, neither Nelves reacted in time, nor did his tough skin survive the slash. Splash! Blood sprayed akin to water coming out of a hose, and Shia didn't waste a single drop of it as she swiftly placed herself in its direction, drinking it with a look of pure euphoria. Smack! You little demon! Nelves kicked Shia away with a look of great disturbance and tightened his muscles, sealing the wound shut in an instant. Your blood tastes horrid, Shia commentated while wiping her mouth, but it will do the trick. Not giving him any time to react, Shia pounced in his direction akin to a panther, always keeping her body and head low. When Nelves saw that she was aiming for his left thigh this time, he swiftly lifted his knee to block the attack. But Shia switched her target at the last second, twisting her body in midair to strike his right waist, leaving behind a deep trench. This time, she didn't stop her assault at all. As the moment Nelves placed his hand on the wound, she swung from below at the back of his elbow, cutting off another major artery. Splash! You! Nelves got pissed and tried to predict her next movement by preemptively striking where she would land. Alas, Shia was like a serpentine, boneless and beyond flexible. His punch went past her face, missing her completely. When he tried to pull it back, Shia placed the sharp blade on its path, making him gush the bottom of his entire right arm. Then, she opened her mouth below like a crazed freak, gulping down the blood nonstop. With each gulp, her crimson eyes blazed like she was recharging herself in the process. What the F*** CK is this creep? Nelves immediately tried to distance himself from Shia to heal his wounds and get a sense of what he was dealing with, but Shia refused to let him go. Who told you I am done? She chased after him with blood spilling from her lips and eyes gleaming red in the darkness, creating a harrowing scene for Arthur and the others. Ultimate innate ability, blood frenzy. This is the second time I saw her use it. Jamal gulped a mouthful in dread, recalling some old memories. Will she be okay? Arthur asked nervously. Okay, you should worry about the other. She won't stop until he either dies or she exhausts Bleeder's blood pool. Jamal refocused on helping Sergio with his arrows, fully trusting that Shia wouldn't lose against Nelves even if he was a Tier 3 Nightcrawler. He wasn't confident for no reason. He knew that Tier 3 Nightcrawlers could range from insanely powerful to meh, all due to their evolutionary paths differing greatly from one to another. For example, Nelves could be a Nightcrawler who lucked out and ate a natural treasure that helped him evolve remarkably and obtain powerful abilities, or a Nightcrawler who ate something that was just enough to evolve him, limiting his strength and potential greatly. In other words, just because a Nightcrawler was higher tiered, it didn't automatically give him a win. The same applied to Daywalkers. In the case of Shia, while she might be still a junior Daywalker, her true strength could rival that of a Pathfinder Daywalker, which was the next breakthrough. All due to her choosing remarkable evolution for her first breakthrough. Right now, she was teaching a grave lesson to Nelves for daring to target her, as she made sure to not leave him even a moment of breather. The moment he tried to defend a spot, she sliced another. Her speed, flexibility, and reaction speed were simply too much for him. After a few moments of her demonic bombardment, Nelves was left completely bloodied, spilling everywhere and tainting his fur red. Now, he truly looked like a devil. He is bleeding, but all of my cuts are external. She narrowed her eyes coldly. I have yet to strike his vitals. Just leave him be. He should bleed to end. Before Bleeder could finish his sentence, Nelves cracked his neck with an indifferent expression. I guess it's my fault for taking you lightly. I should have known Queen Weber wouldn't place a kill hit on a nobody. Nelves lifted his head until his bone-chilling gaze landed on Shia. But fun times are over. Immediately after, Nelves' muscles started to inflate while his flesh wounds were healing at a noticeable speed simultaneously. In less than a few seconds, his body was almost double the size with muscles so overpumped they threatened to blow the veins on their own. Nelves breathed ruggedly, his nostrils letting out heated steam, seemingly having difficulty maintaining this form. Shit, the F***er is an enhancement-type Nightcrawler. Bleeder shouted, Make a run for it, Shia. Bleeder could tell that Nelves was already a strong entity after he suffered from so many attacks from Shia and still hadn't fallen. Now that he knew Nelves specialized in enhancement, he realized Shia stood no chance against him in his current empowered state. Shia heard her partner, but she didn't move an inch. She merely glanced behind at the Larson brothers and then refocused on Nelves, who was walking towards her. I am their guardian and I promise to get them back home safely. Shia said coldly, They ain't dying under my watch. Not waiting until Nelves made his move, Shia disappeared out of sight, sprinting in his direction while staying low. This time, she threw a crescent blade at a great speed toward him while keeping a respectful distance. Ting! Alas, the crescent blade bounced off Nelves's shoulder blade, making a clinging noise akin to hitting a solid metal. The crescent blade curved back like a boomerang, and Shia caught it with a grim expression. Time to die. Nelves smiled once, and then he smashed his fist on the ground, sending out a powerful, seismic shockwave. Shia knew that her legs would be gone if she ate the shockwave directly, forcing her to jump away. But the moment she did this, Nelves was already lying in wait. He entered a kicking position and launched a giant rock in her direction at a blistering speed. When Shia saw the size of the rock, she knew that it was nearly impossible to twist her body and evade it. She lifted her arms and braced for impact, using her crystallized blood shield to protect her. Alas, the rock was just too much. Boom! The crystallized blood shattered upon impact, slowing the rock's momentum for a bit, but it was not enough. It smashed Shia's forearm bones to pieces and hurled her flying in the direction of Jamal, Levi, and Arthur. Come on, Shia, we can't hold on much longer. Before Jamal could finish his sentence, his eyes captured the sight of a bloodied body rolling at great speed in front of them. After a few bounces, it stopped against a tree, lying motionless. Arthur, Jamal, and even Levi turned their heads to gaze at the motionless body. Though Levi couldn't see her, her spiritual aura was so faint it felt like she could die at any moment. Shia! Jamal stuttered for a moment and then shouted her name with a petrified expression. Seeing no response, his heart dropped to the bottom of his stomach. Follow me, he shouted at the Larson brothers while he rushed in her direction. When he arrived, he reached out to his backpack and pulled out a wooden pink totem in the shape of a small bottle. He smacked it on Arthur's chest while yelling at him to feed it to her. Then, he aimed his bow in the direction of Nelves, who was seen knocking down trees with a single arm swing as he headed to finish the job. Arthur looked at the pink totem with parted lips, looking like he had no idea what to do with it. Knowing that his brother never interacted with recovery totems or was attentive enough to listen in his classes, Levi reached out with his hand randomly until he touched the totem in his brother's hand. He swiftly snatched it and opened the bottle. Then, he ordered him sternly, "Open her mouth and help me pour it." Still shaken, Arthur did as he was told. As Levi was pouring a pink liquid into Shia's mouth, he was mumbling the incantation to activate it. By the golden rays of dawn's light, awaken now, restore and ignite. With the warmth of the sun and the strength of the day, heal all wounds and mend dismay. The moment he finished, the pink liquid illuminated brightly within Shia's body, making her muddled eyes gain some focus. Although it hadn't healed her wounds yet, the pink liquid numbed the agonizing pain and focused on dealing with the grave internal injuries first. The first thing she saw was Nelves's shadow looming closer behind Levi and Arthur. She knew that Jamal wasn't going to stand up against him, not in his current exhausted state. "Gio, Tesser, Gio," she whispered with great difficulty, coughing out blood in the process. Through the noise of falling trees and Sergio's constant chaotic battle, no one would have heard her, but Levi did. His sensitive ears picked up on everything, and he swiftly relayed the news to Jamal and Arthur. Although the orders sounded ludicrous and suicidal, Jamal knew that it wasn't time to question if Levi heard wrong or not. On the other hand, Arthur didn't even waste a split second questioning his brother. He picked Levi and Shia in both arms and sprinted toward the army of spiders. A mere mortal, a mere civilian, running to his damnation. Shock dart. Jamal cleared the path towards Sergio with a single arrow while chasing after Arthur. Still, a few spiders were on his way. Arthur immediately placed Shia and Levi above his shoulders and charged through spiders with his head lowered and roaring at the top of his lungs. He kneed some spiders, hurling them away, but a few others managed to sink their fangs deeply into his thighs, waist, and even his glutes. Ay. All Arthur could do was continue roaring, his bloodshot eyes affixed on no one but Sergio, who was watching them with buckled knees. He was already drop-dead tired, holding on through pure will and hope. Hope that Shia was going to save their asses. But As he looked at her dangling from Arthur's shoulder, that hope was extinguished and was replaced with a despairing laugh. "We are F***ed, aren't we, Othner?" Othner remained silent, his eyes scanning the whole situation from the mace. No matter which way he saw it, they were beyond doomed. The supposed savior was taken out. Nelves was approaching akin to the Grim Reaper. Their mounts were murdered, and worst of all, the connection was down, so no one outside the forest had any clue about their predicament. To decide to group on me, I can't imagine what happened there. Sergio uttered in derision as he watched Arthur place Shia and Levi next to him. Then he fell on his knees, incapable of standing up for another second. "Get those F***ers off me." Meanwhile, the spiders were still latched onto Arthur, leaving him to groan in agonizing pain. "Arthur, I got you." Levi reached out to the spiritual spiders in his vision and killed them off by bursting their abdomen with a single strike. The abdomen was their weakest point, making it simple for Levi to kill them without any struggle. After he was done, he left the heads attached to his brother's flesh, knowing that removing them was a death sentence. The fangs were just so deep, the moment he removed the heads, Arthur's wounds would gush out uncontrollably. Jamal came from behind, still firing basic arrows to further clear out the area. While he had tried his best, he had merely cleared out a 5-meter radius. The spiders took no time to recollect their strength and surrounded the group in a small circle, making anyone believe that their lives were already claimed, but not Levi. He could hear Shia mumbling something, and if his guess was correct, they must do everything in their power to buy her time. "Protect Shia," Levi ordered as he stood in battle stance, facing the northern side. When Sergio, Jamal, and their nightcrawlers saw this, they couldn't help but smile bitterly. In their minds, Levi could be excused for acting like this since he was blind and could see only the spider's spiritual auras. It was nowhere as terrifying and despairing as the sight of an army of flesh-eating, disgusting giant spiders gazing at you akin to a delicious meal on a moonless night. "Protect her." But when even Bleeder voiced the same concern, everyone's gazes turned solemn, and they swiftly entered a battle stance, willing to fight to the last breath. If Levi could be excused for not knowing any better, then Bleeder's words reignited hope in their hearts. Hope that Shia didn't group them up for no reason. Scree. Sadly, the spiders had no chill. The moment their eyes adjusted to their heat auras, they let out the same screech and charged at the party with their fangs clicking non-stop. Jamal and Sergio pulled out dagger-shaped wooden totems from their backpack and nodded at each other. Just as the spiders were about to pounce at them, Jamal shouted out an incantation while smashing the tiny wooden dagger on the ground. "By the sun's eternal flame, purge the dark and unleash your claim. Shield your eyes." The instant the last word left his lips, the wooden dagger exploded and released a potent flash of purified sunlight, expanding for more than 10 meters and burning away all the spiders in the zone. The flash lasted for a mere second before dying out, but the damage it caused was astronomical. Only Ash was left behind in the 10-meter radius, while the rest of the spiders cowered away akin to a teenager asked to do chores. "Fear not, my little ones. It's just a D-grade assault totem." Nelves' voice resounded from a distance. "I didn't think you were still saving them." "Oh well, what does it matter anymore?" Sergio and Jamal's expressions turned gloomy, knowing that such totems were kinda useless at this point. They saved them for emergencies and as a last tramp card, but this situation was simply beyond their grade. As expected, the spiders pounced on them again after their short-term memory acted up and made them forget what happened to the previous pack. Sergio glanced at the last assault totem in his possession and then smashed it on the ground with a grim expression, activating it at once with the incantation. The second batch of spiders fried up again, but alas, more poured in to fill in the gaps. "It's getting sad. Just give up and I promise I will be gentle." Nelves sighed. "If I was getting something out of this besides my survival, I would have been more motivated to kill you, but beggars can't be choosers." Nelves waved at the spiders, forcing them to behave temporarily since his authority could not rival that of Derewibra. But It was enough to create an execution ground. So who's first? Nelves picked a medium-sized wooden log and waved it around like he was playing with a twig. But the wheezing noise absolutely petrified the party, making them understand that a single strike was all it would take to blow them into pieces. Me, take me. Yet, Levi stepped in front of the group, standing with a straight back, but his expression was as regretful and bitter as ever. Levi coughed, get down here. Let me go first. I'm already halfway there. Arthur crawled towards his brother with a look of utter determination. Arthie, this entire situation is on me. I told you that risks are a must to move forward, but I have truly bitten more than I can chew. Levi smiled wryly. I've spent my entire life visualizing life through books, but only now do I understand. Real life is nothing like books, where everything follows a written script. I am sorry, I have let you down. Levi was genuinely upset and regretful that his plan didn't just risk his life, but that of his brother's. He always dreamed of being a daywalker and roaming the wastelands to reclaim the planet from the infestation of nightcrawlers due to reading many heroic stories of high-ranked daywalkers when he was a child. They were his guardian heroes, watching over him and fueling him with the courage to handle the nightcrawlers infesting his little world. Only now did he truly grasp what life was like for daywalkers in the wastelands. There are no safety nets, only constant threats, with everything and everyone trying to consume their light. One could plan all he wanted, but at the end of the day, it would take a single passing powerful nightcrawler in a bad mood to snack on his body and shadow life seed. Don't King apologize to me. I would have chased you to the depths of hell if I had to. I have left you alone once, and you ended up watching our parents get murdered and your eyes ripped away. Arthur reached out and held Levi's pants tightly and then said with an earnest, stern tone, I have since vowed to never leave your side. Not now. Not ever. Clap, clap. Nelves listened to the whole thing, and when Arthur finished, he slowly clapped his hands with a mocking look. Ah, now that's what I call true brotherhood. Though, I wish it never finds me. Nelves sneered. In the shadow dimension, you are proclaimed a walking corpse the instant you leave your back open to another one. Make no mistake, the real world is no different. But that's what makes genuine and trusted relationships more special. Levi smiled faintly. To know that someone has your back in this cruel and merciless era is the greatest gift. Greatest gift? Nelves snickered, disappearing and reappearing in an instant behind Levi. Then he pierced Levi's abdomen from the back, lifting him up and Arthur in the air with one hand like they weighed absolutely nothing. Huh, brother? Arthur gazed at the pierced, bloody log inside his brother's stomach and felt like his vision was getting cloudy. Before he could react, Nelves smacked it back to the party like he was swatting a fly. Then, he carried Levi in front of him, staring at his agonized, confused expression as Levi gripped the log with trembling hands. His head darted around, struggling to process what had just happened, until a creeping coldness spread from his stomach, dull and unnatural, making the moment feel even more surreal. The greatest gift is absolute strength. If you were strong, you wouldn't be dangling helplessly in my hands. If I was strong, I wouldn't be following the *TCH's orders. Strength, 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 it's everything. Nelves hurled Levi back to the group, his blood spraying and splashing Shia and the others. Yet, their stunned eyes never left the gaping hole in Levi's stomach. The sooner you get it through your thick skull, the better your life will get. Nelves sneered when he saw everyone grouping on Levi, trying their best to close the massive hole, but to no avail. The moment Levi joined the Donut Club with Rengoku and Ace, there wasn't anything they could do to save him. My bad. Maybe in your next life. Nelves took a deep breath to ease his agitation and then walked away, knowing that his authority over the spiders had expired. In other words, Russell. The spiders charged again at the party, seeing nothing but red. Sergio and Jamal have already closed their eyes, accepting their fate, while Arthur was left trying his best to stop his brother's non-stop bleeding. But alas, his giant hands were big enough to cover the hole. But that was the only thing they could do. Tears flooded down Arthur's eyes as he gazed at the scorched marks in place of his brother's eyes. It was like he was living a déjà vu, remembering the day he was brought up by his uncle to the hospital and seeing his big brother lying on the bed with bandages over his eyes and torso. All he could do at that time was cry and cry while holding his brother's hand, feeling utterly helpless. He thought if he were to fall into the same situation, it would be different, but here he was sharing the same helplessness as when he was a child. Whoosh, whoosh, as the spiders jumped on them and sank their fangs across their bodies. Arthur used his wide back to shield Levi, not letting a single spider touch him. Even Jamal and Sergio suffered from major bites to keep Shia safe until the last second. It was like they still had a tint of hope in her. Totem of protection, shine your light. They made the best decision possible as the moment they were buried under the mountain of spiders. A sudden flash of light emerged from the cracks, releasing concentrated, purified sunlight everywhere. Nelves was hit by one of the beams and felt like he was pierced by a bullet, forcing him to jump away instantaneously. The moment he landed on a tree, he touched the hole in his chest with a grim expression, feeling the searing pain coursing through him. But he didn't give it much thought as his eyes were fixed on the sudden emergence of a golden, shimmering dome, big enough to contain Shia's party. As for the mountains of spiders, it was already decimated, leaving the rest of the spiders to cower away from the glaring dome. Oh, we aren't dead. Sergio and Jamal lifted their heads after sensing the warm sensation coursing through their bodies. It was like they were bathing under their holy pillar. Even their wounds were healing at a comfortable pace while the pain was numbed. Damn you, Dad. Did you have to make the custom incantation so damn long and complicated? Shia spoke at last as she held onto a shimmering, sun-like necklace. Shia, is this what I think it is? Jamal's eyes widened in disbelief as he gazed at the shimmering necklace. Before she could reply, Sergio exclaimed in shock. It is. Great, a protection totem, solar dome. His reaction was understandable, as this totem wasn't even sold to the public, but used as a gift by the Solar Aegis Sanctuary to reward the top 5 highest-ranked daywalkers on the Holy Heliodor region leaderboard. It was a priceless treasure for even high-ranked daywalkers, yet it was in the hands of Shia. This isn't the time to discuss my father's treasure. Shia ordered with a hurried tone. My arms are still broken. Help the Larson brothers recover faster. I have a couple of recovery totems in my backpack. Sergio and Jamal swiftly reached into Shia's backpack and poured everything on the ground. Besides some makeup and hair gadgets, they found 1 assault totem, 1 defensive totem, and 2 healing totems. When they saw them, they smacked themselves for not considering digging into her belongings earlier without her permission. But it was already in the past. They took the recovery totems, and each one focused on a Larson brother. Sergio flipped the passed-out Arthur away from Levi and immediately poured the pink liquid into his lips. Although his body was filled with small spider bites, there were too many, causing him to lose a significant amount of blood. Yet, his situation was nowhere as brutal as Levi's. Shit, this is too much. Everyone's expressions turned for the worse after Levi's massive stomach wound was revealed. His guts were exposed for the world to see. Feed him, Shia shouted angrily at the shell-shocked Jamal. The protective dome is keeping him alive. As she said, Levi might be passed out cold, but he was still breathing faintly. If it wasn't for the healing prowess of the protective dome, he would already be a goner. That's what they thought, but in reality, Levi was still alive because of one entity. Unbeknownst to everyone, Levi was meeting him right now in his dream. Levi and Ashcrow were seen standing on top of an empty, dead field with a scarlet sky, clouds, and a cracked moon gleaming from above. Levi's clothes and hair became pitch black, while Ashcrow remained the same, maintaining his creepy bat-like appearance. Levi instantly knew that he was inside a dream and that Ashcrow had invaded it, twisting it into his desired environment. The fact that he was here made him assume that he was still alive on the outside, which implied that Shia had succeeded in activating her protection totem. While Levi didn't know what kind of protection totem was in her possession, he was the only one capable of hearing her faint whispers of the incantation, allowing him to guess the totem's type. That's why he tried his best to buy time for her, even risking his life in the process. He just didn't expect Nelves not to care about his talk no jutsu and pin him in no time. Ashkral, is any of this you're doing? Be straight. I think we are long past the foolery. Levi asked, if you're talking about the Lurker Spider Queen's trap, I had nothing to do with it. Ashkral floated towards Levi with a hunched back and claws long enough that they were grinding on the ground. When he was a mere meter away from him, he showed a sinister smile and confessed, but I did know about it. Levi went silent. Ashkral's silence and disappearance ever since their last discussion about the contract did raise some concerns in his mind. He knew that Ashkral wouldn't give up on him that easily, not after spending a decade monitoring and saving him for himself. What now? I believe you have the upper hand. Levi lifted his arms with a bitter smile. Do your best. I don't have much choice anyway. Levi wasn't delusional to believe that Ashkral hadn't brought him here unless he was certain that he had the upper hand in their negotiation. I like it when you're sensible. Ashkral chuckled. Still, it's only fair to show you how bad your situation is. I don't want to hear you complaining that I have swindled you. Ashkral snapped his finger, and the cracked moon rippled akin to a peaceful lake. Then, images of the outside world were reflected on it, stunning Levi. I can see how. Levi murmured as he touched his scorch marks. Unfortunately, his eyes were still non-existent even in the dream world. Yet, the scenes of Shia and the others trying their best to wake him up appeared as vivid as a voice in a silent room. I'm sharing my vision with you. Enjoy it while it lasts, Ashkral replied. But when he saw the condition of his little brother, the joy of seeing the real world after a decade was extinguished. Yet, this wasn't even the worst part. The scene switched to Nelves hurling giant trees and massive boulders at the solar dome. He seemed absolutely livid as he cursed Shia and the others. Is this what I get for trying to be nice? Wasting my energy and time for a decided outcome. Crack, crack. Each time a tree or a boulder smashed the solar dome, it released a wave of purified sunlight, weakening it bit by bit. The solar dome is great against night crawlers and their abilities, but it doesn't work as well against real-life objects. Levi's face went dark, realizing that if Nelves kept his bombardment, he would destroy the dome in less than half an hour. Half an hour should have been good enough to buy them some time until reinforcement arrived, but the network was down, and no one knew if their emergency flares were seen or not. Even if they were seen in time, it took an hour, give or take, from the outpost to the forest using mounts. In simpler terms, there was a high chance Nelves would get to them before reinforcement arrived. This time, he wouldn't waste a single moment bashing their heads. Levi did not know of Phoneling's existence, or that he was already in the forest. If he did, he would have a bit of negotiating chips, but alas, in his eyes, Ashkral was their only savior, and if he were to reject his proposal, he had no idea what he would do next, especially when his life and his brother's hung on his fingertips. You prove your point. I am willing to sign your desired contract, Levi requested with a look of unwearying acceptance. My only condition is to save my brother and the others. In his eyes, he wouldn't even bat an eye if the contract was pure rubbish. He was the one responsible for bringing his brother into this mess, a mess that was beyond their capabilities. He would rather lose his sight 10 times over before letting his brother die. Of course I will do that. I am not a monster. Ashkral's demonic smile said otherwise. Without further ado, he waved his hand, and a massive nocturnal contract was summoned in front of them. It was already written and prepared, even signed by Ashkral's name at the bottom. The only thing missing was Levi's signature. Before Levi read the terms, he felt a chill course down his spine at the notion that Ashkral had this contract drafted for over a decade, awaiting this very moment. But then, he glanced above him and saw the horror his party was going through. He took a deep breath and looked back at Ashkral. There's an old saying that I have read in a book. Levi smiled. It says if an oil company wants to buy your land, there's probably oil under it. What is that supposed to mean? Ashkral raised an eyebrow in intrigue. Levi replied calmly as he started reading the terms of the contract. Isn't it obvious? I don't know why you're seeking my body, but I know there is something there. I'm just saddened I don't know what it is before selling it. Sign the contract, and you'll find out. Ashkrell grinned. Levi would be lying if he said he wasn't curious about what Ashkrell saw in him. But he didn't allow his curiosity to influence his judgment as he sped through the contract. After a few moments, Levi finished the first major term and was left staring at Ashkrell in bafflement. He found out that he would be in charge of his body, possessing the majority of control. He thought before that Ashkrell was manipulating him all this time to force him into signing a 50-50 contract. This contract ensured equal control over the body, as both the Nightcrawler and the human would be able to alter between leadership and fellowship. This contract rarely took place since both Nightcrawlers and humans cherished having complete control. They knew that if it was 50-50, it might lead to an uneventful death due to a lack of cooperation or worse, causing significant harm to innocent civilians. Thus, it was frowned upon for daywalkers to have this kind of contract, as society wouldn't accept them fully. Levi thought that Ashkrell was seeking this kind of contract, but here he was staring at 100% control in his favor. Why? He couldn't help but wonder about Ashkrell's reasons. All you need to know is that it has to be you in the lead. Besides this cryptic message, Ashkrell gave no further details. Realizing that he wouldn't get his answers, Levi moved on. While this term had restored some hope in Levi's mind that maybe his life wasn't completely screwed, when he continued reading, he found out at the end that everything wasn't sunshine and rainbow. No death binding and an indefinite term? Levi's expression turned grave. Doesn't this mean I'm stuck with you until you decide to let me go? Even worse, if I died, your soul will remain unaffected. Levi wasn't a fan of those terms in the slightest. He understood that Nightcrawlers and humans could only work together efficiently if their life and death were bound together. This would ensure that both parties would give their best in every single endeavor, since their life literally hung on the line. As for the other term, all Daywalkers' contracts had a fixed term. Usually, it lasted until the Shadow Life seed grew into a tree, bore fruition, and created a new Shadow Life seed, restarting the circle until a new tree was born. When the two trees reached their growth limit, that was when the contract ended and both parties separated from the other, taking a tree for each. Of course, this separation would weaken them a bit, but it would reward them with autonomy at a level of prowess unimaginable. It was a win-win situation for both parties. While reaching this stage was extremely rare, as it implied evolving the Nightcrawler to Tier 7, which wasn't a simple journey in the slightest. It gave the humans and Nightcrawlers a goal that assured their eventual autonomy. But, indefinite term, Levi realized that he might be trapped with Ashkrell forever. Don't flatter yourself, boy. Ashkrell sneered. The contract is indefinite for the opposite reason. I have no interest in being stuck with you if you don't live up to my expectations. I have very, very high expectations. Wait, are you saying that I might be dropped in the future? Levi knitted his eyebrows. Yes, I have a certain goal in mind, and if you prove inadequate in helping me achieve it, I will have no choice but to start again with another entity, Ashkrell replied calmly. Levi went silent, not because he was hurt by Ashkrell's lack of confidence, but because he realized that if he was to sign the contract, he could not stop moving forward until he helped Ashkrell achieve his goal. That's because an early separation during the growth of the Shadow Life seed would kill both parties. It was like the moment a Daywalker was born, the Shadow Life seed would turn into his primary organ, more precious than his heart or even brain. Fortunately, when this happened, the seed died as well, ensuring the demise of the Nightcrawler. This made the Nightcrawlers avoid this scenario at all costs. Yet, Ashkrell was telling him straight up that he could easily drop him and switch him with another person like his life would be unaffected. While it seemed impossible, Levi knew that Ashkrell was too much of an enigma. If there was any Nightcrawler capable of surviving the separation, it would definitely be him. What do I do? Do I sign it? Do I even have a different choice? Many questions roamed Levi's mind as he turned around and gazed at the predicament of his party. Nelvest was getting angrier and more ferocious by the second, already uprooting hundreds of trees and hurling them at the solar dome. While the trees had gotten burnt out by the dome's flares, their illumination had gotten way too dim compared to their first appearance. Do I wait? Can I afford to wait? Ash Crowell holds all the cards, and if he feels like I'm trying to buy time, he might not let me live. Levi shook his head with a bitter smile. No matter which way he studied his choices, he always came back to the same two choices. He could reject Ash Crowell's proposal and be left to die, knowing that he was the only one keeping him alive at the moment, or sign the contract. He wasn't scared of the idea of death, as he always saw it as a much more merciful way of leaving his hellish world, but the fact that his brother's life was also on the line changed everything. Boy, signing the contract to save your brother is understandable, but is that really your only motivation? Ash Crowell whispered near Levi's ears. Have you already forgotten about what happened that night? The screams of your dearest parents? The pain of having your eyes ripped away? Have you already forgiven those two night crawlers? If so, you are either the most benevolent human in existence, or you are just a coward. Levi remained composed, already numbed to the night crawler's emotional manipulation. But when he was reminded of that night and what he had witnessed, he realized that it wouldn't cut it to just be an average daywalker. He had just spent a couple of days hanging with actual decent daywalkers, and yet their lives were held by a pen in his hands. Everything he had lived and experienced in those days made him truly see the world of daywalkers and what had become of their planet. The lives of people inside the holy pillars were utterly different from those exploring and attempting to reclaim their planet. Now that he had experienced both worlds, he understood that it wouldn't cut it to just sign a contract with any nightcrawler like he was dreaming about in the confines of his safe space. He needed a strong nightcrawler. No, he needed the strongest nightcrawler as his partner to ensure that his potential surpassed everyone and everything, especially when his growth was impaired due to his missing eyes. It wasn't like he had such nightcrawlers waiting in line to sign him up. If I'm already living on the edge of life and death, of sanity and insanity, what's holding me back from giving him my all and seeking my parents' redemption? Levi's expression turned icy by the second. Indefinite term? Dropping me if I was inadequate? Such conditions should have never fazed me. Not now. Not ever. Levi lifted his head and gazed at the empty signature location. The more he looked at it, the more it seemed to call him. Before Levi could know it, he was already floating in front of it while holding a giant white pen. Ash Crowell was there, right next to him. Sign it, and your life will turn upside down. I guarantee it. Ash Crowell grinned. You should work on your convincing skills. That sounds more ominous than good, but I've already made up my mind. You can stop pitching it. Levi tightened his grip on the pen and double-checked one last time for any fine print he had missed in the contract. When he found that only those two terms were considered negative to him, he steeled his expression and started writing his full name, each letter widening Ash Crowell's devilish grin. Levi didn't bother negotiating on those terms, as he could tell that Ash Crowell would never accept the contract without them, especially when he was already giving Levi 100% of the control. If he didn't have those terms added, the contract would be no different than any other Daywalker's contract. If Ash Crowell was interested in that, he would have signed Levi many years ago. Just as Levi reached the last letter, he stopped and turned to face Ash Crowell. Then, he asked suddenly, Am I your first contracted human? Ash Crowell paused for a moment, not expecting such a curveball. You aren't even in the top 10 list. But he still answered him truthfully, even though he knew his answer might change Levi's mind. In his eyes, if his answer changed Levi's mind, he would lose interest in him. Levi was silenced for a few moments, many thoughts coursing his mind to the shocking implication that Ash Crowell had more than 10 failed partners. This would make anyone question if Ash Crowell was giving his partners a fair chance to aim at his goal, or if he dropped them once an inconvenience arose. Yet, Levi's confidence remained unfazed. I may not be your first partner, but I'm going to be your last, Levi said coldly as he wrote the final letter of his name. Mark my words. Oh, how I wish. Ash Crowell laughed in amused delight as he watched the nocturnal contract burn into 2 clouds of ash. For now, enjoy the show. This will be the first time you see a tiny bit of my peak, and most likely your last if you don't work hard." Before Levi could react, he found himself kicked from the dream world, slowly regaining his consciousness in the real world. When he expected to see utter darkness and everyone's spiritual auras like always, he was stunned to see Shia's, Jamal's, and Sergio's faces crowding him. "He is up. He is actually up. It's a miracle." Jamal laughed excitedly. "What the? His stomach hole has been sealed without leaving even a scar." Sergio exclaimed in disbelief as he gazed at Levi's smooth, dirted abs. His reaction was understandable when Levi ended up recovering faster than Arthur, who was still lying on the floor, salivating over the dirty ground. Levi ignored them and immediately reached out with his hand towards Shia, caressing her face in astonishment. "It's real. I can see," Levi murmured to himself. Shia was caught off guard by his action, but she didn't pull away from his hand. She knew he couldn't see what he was doing and might still be in shock. But before she could think too much of it, her face suddenly went as pale as a sheet of paper, pure mortification taking over her. Then, her eyes rolled to the back of her head, passing out on top of Levi's chest. Thud! Thud! Jamal and Sergio followed along, one landing on top of Arthur's back and the other to the side of Levi. Even their contracted night crawlers went down. "Am I really that ugly?" Ashkral's saddened voice resounded from behind Levi, forcing him to turn around with a dazed expression. He expected many things, but he didn't think that Ashkral would make an appearance in his flesh in the real world. Yet, what shocked him the most was the sight of him standing inside the solar dome without a single scratch. He could see that the solar dome was trying its best to burn him, but his leathery, ashen skin remained untouched. "Ow! Save your questions for later. We don't have much time before our souls get linked and bodies inked." Ashkral turned around and faced Nelves, who was standing tens of meters away from them. He was just in the process of uprooting another tree, having no idea what was going on. "Little F asterisk curs wasting my time and energy." Nelves cursed under his breath while cleaning his sweaty forehead with his sleeve. Then he pulled the entire tree with its roots in a single motion, hugging it with both arms. The moment he placed it next to him, his vision was finally cleared, landing on Ashkral and Levi. "Here's enough." Nelves went quiet, blinking twice to double-check if his eyes weren't deceiving him. Just a few moments ago, he was staring at Shia, Jamal, and Sergio, trying to revive their friend. In an instant, they were the ones on the ground, while Levi was standing next to one of the meanest-looking nightcrawlers he had ever seen. He ought to feel baffled. "Who are you? And how dare you interfere in Queen Loebra's feast?" Nelves entered a defensive stance instantly, even bringing out the name of his master. He wasn't able to sense Ashkral's aura in the slightest, which creeped the hell out of him. "Dra Webra? Oh, so that was her name," Ashkral murmured to himself. Then he pointed his long-clawed finger at Nelves and ordered expressionlessly, "You have touched what's mine. Kill yourselves as an apology." Before Levi could react to such a ludicrous command, his mouth widened to the limit in stupefaction at the sight of the spider's army running into each other's fangs or smashing their abdomen against the trees, doing whatever it took to kill themselves. While this could be excused for Ashkral's authority being on the higher tiers, nothing could explain what Nelves was doing. Levi watched him hold his head with both hands and without an ounce of hesitation or complaint, snapped it off. Even Nelves failed to understand what had just happened. His eyes reflected utter confusion and daze as he fell sideways, his hands still affixed to his shattered neck. Thud! The giant uprooted oak tree fell upon him after losing its support, seemingly avenging itself and its perished sisters. Silence engulfed the forest at last, as no spider was left alive, both near and far. It was like Ashkral's order resounded across the entire forest, even though he spoke in a normal octave. Stun-locked, Levi stared at Ashkral with lips moving, but no words coming out, only hushed-out breaths. But soon his perfect vision started fading, breaking him out of his daze. No, just a little more." Levi ignored everything and lay next to his brother, turning his head to face him. As his vision was going dark, Levi stared at his brother's face with a faint smile. "You sure have grown into a good man," he murmured gently, "though the ponytail has to go." Before Levi knew it, he found himself back in pitch-black darkness. He had dreamed of having his vision restored every single day of his life, and now that it happened, he didn't even appreciate it fully before it was robbed from him. He didn't even look at himself in the mirror. Yet, Levi neither complained nor whined about it. He painted the same serene smile on his face to mask the pain within and turned to look at Ashkrell, wanting to ask him how he did it. But the moment his spiritual vision landed on him, Levi's heartbeats started accelerating rapidly, akin to a child seeing the boogeyman. Horror, confusion, shock, disbelief. A soup of emotions ran rampant across his entire system at the sight of a crimson, potent spiritual aura covering his whole field of vision. It was like a space of darkness transformed into a scarlet world. Levi was almost always composed and rarely stuttered in his speech, but as he gazed at this frightening scarlet aura emitting from Ashkrell, words failed to find him. With great difficulty, he mustered a single question. Just, what are you?" He didn't even use the proper interrogative pronoun. Or did he? As this abomination before him couldn't be defined with just who. "Me?" Ashkrell turned around to face Levi, his magnificent spiritual aura dying out rapidly akin to a flame being extinguished. When his entire aura disappeared and was replaced with a fabled twinkle, a spiritual aura known to belong to Tier 1 night crawlers, Ashkrell grinned and answered with, "I am your partner." The moment Levi heard his response, he felt a sudden electrifying chill course through his entire body, paralyzing him completely. He fell on his back and lay there, feeling like his body no longer belonged to him. It's happening. It's finally happening. Levi had read too many books and dreamed of this moment for so long to not know what was happening. The awakening of a daywalker. With a heart full of anticipation and a bit of unease, Levi focused his senses inward, desiring to feel the entire process and cherish it, knowing that it could happen only once in a lifetime. He wasn't scared of pain, or such as he knew that the Shadow Life seeds had a will of their own, and when presented with a new host, they ensured that the integration process went as smoothly as possible. That was the reason the process began with sedating the entire nervous system. "Boy, it's best that you forget everything that you used to know about daywalkers when dealing with me," Ashkrell advised with an impish chuckle. "Huh? What do you mean?" Levi felt his heart skip a beat, having a bad feeling about this. Brace for impact. The first wave will hit you like a truck. Just as Levi was about to double down on his confusion, a sudden shocking tide of agony washed across his entire body, from his toes straight to his scalp. "Warg?" His question turned into an agonizing screech as he started twitching on the ground, with white foam spilling out his mouth. He was paralyzed, yet he felt every ounce of torment like his pain receptors were being pricked by needles. He couldn't even form a single thought. His mind was fueled with nothing but a never-ending wail. After a few seconds, which felt like years to Levi, the pain lessened until it completely went away. Levi was left lying on the ground with a puddle of sweat already formed underneath him. "Ashkrell, you asshole, are you screwing with me?" Levi cussed with great difficulty. He refused to believe that what he went through was normal, as the pain was nothing he had ever felt in his life. He had read hundreds of Daywalkers' awakenings, and not a single one of them reported any type of pain. "Don't relax now. 2 more waves are still to come." Ashkrell grinned. Levi's heart sunk to the bottom of his stomach in dread at the sound of that. "Please tell me you are a lie." Hey. Before Levi could react, a similar wave of hellish agony smacked him out of nowhere, leaving him vibrating akin to someone going into a seizure. As much as Levi tried his best to resist the urge, the pain was simply too much, forcing his bladder to give in. A warm stream of piss flowed down Levi's pants, but he didn't even feel it. All that was in his mind was for the torment to end already. Pissing on the second wave, not bad. At least he didn't shit himself like Aetherius. Ash Krall seemed to enjoy the show, as this was one of his favorite moments every time he established a contract with a new partner. PL, EA, SE, IB, EGO, more. When the pain subsided, Levi was left beseeching Ash Krall to stop whatever was happening to him. He didn't even care if Ash Krall was responsible for this or not. He just wanted it to end. Kakik, I have watched you dream and prepare for this moment your entire childhood. I thought you would be cherishing and enjoying every moment of it. Ash Krall laughed, uncaring about Levi's pleads. While he was absolutely merciless monster, he really had nothing to do with the pain as it was related to his unique seed. Don't give up so soon. There's only one more wave left. Ash Krall cheered playfully. FCK. Yo, you. Those were the last words Levi uttered before his entire nervous system got struck by a thunderbolt of anguish, leaving him gasping for air. A few seconds later, his consciousness bailed on him at last, realizing that if he remained conscious any longer, his entire nervous system would be fried. Surviving until the last bit of the third wave, I see a promise. Ash Krall nodded in satisfaction. He might eventually get used to it as I did. Unbeknownst to Levi, Ash Krall had shared the same intensity of the pain with him, as his unique seed didn't discriminate during their merger. However, he had gone through the agony so many times he lost count. Since the moment their souls were stamped, he was forced to give up on all of his previous powers and evolutions, becoming a mere Tier 1 Nightcrawler. The pain he felt was no different from Levi's. He just grew numb to it after so many failures to achieve his goal. As he gazed at Levi's foamy mouth and wet pants, a sight unbefitting of anyone, Ash Krall could only murmur to himself, "Don't disappoint me, child. I have fallen way behind. You're my last hope." A few minutes earlier, on the other side of the harrowing forest, Danny, Malik, and the rest of their squad could be seen riding on top of their mounts, rushing in a straight line with panicky expressions. They turned around to look behind them every so often and then sighed in relief when they saw that nothing was behind them. Thank God we listened to Malik, and we didn't reseal our mounts. Matthew wiped his sweaty forehead while glancing at Malik, who was hugging Danny tightly on top of his armored camel. Unlike the rest of the squads, they remained on their mounts, following the advice of Malik to head further into the forest to ensure a peaceful search for the dimensional natural treasures. While they were extremely far away from the way they entered the forest, this move helped them avoid the slow spiders and head straight to another exit. "I can see the edge. We are getting close," Danny exclaimed in excitement as he eyed the emerging wide spaces between the oak trees. "We have to immediately report this matter to the authorities," Matthew uttered with a solemn tone. "I believe we have lost more than 50% of our forces. Such a hit is too massive to our region, considering that many young talents were involved. Let's get out of here first, and then we can worry about." Whoosh! Before Matthew could finish his sentence, his pupils widened in horror at the abrupt appearance of a massive, thick, sticky web attached between the trees in front of them. "Hey, all!" Alas, no matter how hard he shouted or pulled his mount's hair, they were simply moving too fast, and the web appeared only after it entered their 10-meter illumination zone. Before anyone could react, the mounts ended up diving deep within the giant sticky web, stopping only after reaching a couple of meters of depth. No, this isn't happening. This isn't happening." Danny immediately started panicking, moving all over the place to free himself. Alas, the web was stronger than it seemed, as it could hold down even a Tier 3 Nightcrawler. The fact they went to its depths made it even worse. "Don't panic. The spiders are still too far. We can free ourselves before they arrive." Matthew tried to calm everyone down with a stern tone, but inwardly, he was also filled with unfiltered amount of dread. "Try to summon your weapons or reach out to your backpacks for assault totems." When Danny and the others heard his order, their agitation died down a bit, realizing that they had what it took to burn down the web. They just needed to hold them and utter the incantation. Unfortunately, everyone's backpacks were either on their waist or back, making it nearly impossible to get hold of them. The sticky web completely sealed their movements, akin to being thrown into a basin of glue. Just when Danny started to panic again, he sensed Malik's presence behind him. His eyes immediately lit up in hope as he requested agitatedly, "Malik, try to open my backpack with your mouth. You're our only hope." Matthew and the others couldn't turn their heads to see what Danny was talking about, but it didn't stop them from having their hopes reignited. Sadly, the expected sweet, fearful reply was nowhere to be seen. Instead, a hideous, cracked voice resounded in their ears akin to a death decree. "Now, why would I do that after spending this much effort getting you in my trap?" Malik lengthened her neck akin to a serpent, moving in the web freely like a fish in the sea. When she came face to face with the petrified Danny, her delicate face split in half, exposing the hideous visage of a hairy spider with 8 crimson eyes. "What's wrong, darling?" she asked, her mouth salivating with an acidic stench green liquid. "You no longer find me appealing?" The moment Danny saw her true face and smelt the stench, his mind was already gone. He couldn't even muster a scream. His eyes rolled at the back of his head, passing out instantly to protect him from the horrible fate awaiting him. "Danny, what's happening back there?" "Danny! Danny!" Matthew screamed at Danny to speak. Alas, he heard nothing but Malik's cracked voice. "Ah, you decided to be a coward all the way, I see. Fine. I guess I will save you for dessert." Then, she completed her transformation into a giant 8-legged spider, resembling Queen Dowibra, but lacking some qualities. Still, her appearance was terrifying enough for Matthew and the others. The moment she tiptoed in front of them, none of them dared to breathe out loud. But the same didn't apply to their contracted night crawlers, whose lives also hung in the balance. "ZYY Ray, I never expected you to be an undercover sleepwalker for a lurker," one of them uttered coldly. "We have chosen our partners at the same assembly. We even spent half a year in the same classroom. The real question is, how could you betray your own race? You scumbags." ZYY Ray's eyes narrowed murderously. "Humans are supposed to be nothing but food and playthings for us. Yet, you go along and enslave yourselves into weapons, used as mere tools in their hands. I spit on the likes of you." She committed to the spit as she splashed the nearest daywalker's face with her acidic saliva, leaving him hollering in agonizing pain. The rest of the daywalkers shivered as they heard their squad mates' despairing cries and the sizzling noise of his face getting melted off. In a few moments at best, his whimpers died out, making the nearest daywalkers to him glance at his tragic ending. When they saw his exposed skull and brain juices dripping down his chin, their hearts were frozen solid in despair. "You think we didn't want to become sleepwalkers too?" Another contracted nightcrawler in the shape of Sand Scorpion commentated coldly. "It has become extremely difficult to manipulate them with so many protocols humans have developed. SR pills, Anti-Sleepwalkers Bureau, ankle monitors, and more. We were forced into this path to fulfill our evolutions, and I'm certain you just got lucky with this girl. During the earliest years, or even decades of the great civilization's fall, becoming a sleepwalker was easier than drinking water. All the people who weren't lucky enough to be in the chosen blessed cities by the solar divinities ended up either eaten or forced into becoming sleepwalkers. Since at that time, not much knowledge was accessible about sleepwalkers, nightcrawlers, or such, humans did anything to survive, even if it meant accepting being possessed by a nightcrawler. They were easily swindled as the nightcrawlers had written a fixed term in the contract, ensuring the humans that once the nightcrawlers evolved into Tier 9, they would return their bodies to them. It was like a parasitic relationship, and as much as humans despised it, anything was for survival, right? Wrong. Everyone who signed the Sleepwalkers' contract came to the horrifying truth that their souls would be trapped in their bodies without a single way to regain control. This would have been fine if the senses between humans and nightcrawlers weren't shared. In simpler terms, if nightcrawlers were to feast on animals, or worse, human flesh, the contracted human would sense every single thing, and he could do nothing about it. Luck? All I hear is excuses. ZYY Ray sneered. Nothing has been forced on you. You are simply lazy, having no interest in mastering the arts of manipulation. You think I've found this beauty lying around and prepared to sign her life away. Zyre went on to brag about how she tracked Mala for over 2 years since the moment her father committed suicide for not being able to handle lack of sleep, constant nightcrawlers, dreams invasion, stress to provide, the death of his wife, and more unimaginable traumas. And how she made sure to visit her every time she slept, installing thoughts of vengeance in her dreams without showing herself. After 2 years of wearing her off and completely twisting her personality to hate the government, the flawed system that drove her father to despair, she finally made her move and suggested the Sleepwalker's contract. At that moment, Malik's mind was already gone, and all she wanted was to relieve herself from everything while going out with a bang. I had her so wrapped under my finger that she didn't mind participating in the assembly so I could choose her and commence a fake Daywalker contract. All I had to do in return was kill as many Daywalkers as possible, which was already my goal. Zyre smirked cockily. Luck? I don't believe in such bullsh*t. You either have it in you or you don't. The Daywalkers and their contracted nightcrawlers were silenced, realizing that they were under the presence of a cruel mastermind. While she seemed to have cocky tendencies, they understood that she earned the right to be one. Bypassing all the protocols humans had put in place to prevent the rise of sleepwalkers was no easy feat, especially with contracts being thoroughly checked by the authorities during the assembly and before issuing any Daywalker their official ID. Feel honored. You will be the food that will enrich my intelligence even more. Before this snarky, prideful remark could take root in the Daywalkers' minds, a sudden whisper assaulted Zyre's ears. Kill yourselves as an apology. The moment Ashkral's cold, authoritative voice was processed in her mind, Zyre went blank for a second, and before she realized it, she found herself penetrating her abdomen with her 8 sharp legs. PSSSSSSSSSSSSSSS. Abdomen's fluid flew everywhere, tainting the web and showering the Daywalkers in the most revolting stench in existence. Yet, no one paid any heed to the smell or their covered bodies in yellow juices. They just kept staring at Zyre's twitching legs. A few moments later, silence engulfed the area again. This time, everyone was too stunned to speak. The only unified thought coursing through their minds was, what the F***ck just happened? They had foreseen their end in many ways, eaten alive, stripped of their shadow life seed, or even eaten by the incoming spider's army. Yet, not in their wildest dreams would they have imagined such an ending. The cocky and brazen Zyre offed herself like someone pressed the shutdown button in her. No matter how hard they thought about it, everyone came to a single conclusion regardless of how ludicrous it sounded. Was she killed by the Lurker Queen Spider? Alas, no one was there to clarify this madness. Who King cares? We live, Matthew shouted hastily. Wake up that moron and let's get the F***ck out of this hellhole. Seconded, I have never felt this level of creeps before in my life. Something sinister is happening under the surface, and I have no interest in investigating it. All the Daywalkers agreed with Matthew, swiftly using Zyre's juices to slip up a hand or two and reach out to their backpacks. After retrieving the assault totems, they burnt the web, entangling them in their mounts, freeing themselves at last. Danny was also freed while still unconscious. But, after landing on the ground face first, he immediately regained consciousness. The first thing he did was beseech loudly while cowering behind his arms, not even daring to open his eyes. Please don't eat me. I can pay you handsomely. Please, please, shut your trap, you goddamn disgrace. Where were my eyes when I picked you? I can't believe I'm stuck with you for life. F***ck me. His contracted Nightcrawler wasn't pleased in the slightest, cursing him nonstop. His reaction was more than understandable when considering that Danny was supposed to help him reach Tier 7. After this performance, he doubted if they would even survive their next fight. This showed that when it came to becoming a sleepwalker, the burden fell on the Nightcrawler to convince the human by any means possible. But when it came to becoming a Daywalker, the burden fell on the humans to show their talents to attract a decent Nightcrawler. This was one of the main reasons all Nightcrawlers refused to accept Levi. None of them was foolish enough to link their life and death with a blind kid who could not absorb light efficiently nor fight properly with such a massive disability. This would drive one to wonder just what Ashkral had seen in him. On the other side of the forest, at the same time, when Danny's party was captured in the border's web, Mantis' squad wasn't faring any better. They were forced to fight the entire time due to not having their mounts summoned, and no one with Levi's great detection skill to warn them of ambushes. Thus, as they were running towards the entrance of the forest while fighting simultaneously, they had already lost 6 members of the squad. Only Mantis, Masai, and 2 more decent daywalkers were left running for their lives with bodies painted red and wounds in yellow and spider's juices. "Keep running. There is only 1 kilometer left," Mantis shouted femininely. "I am not dying in this shithole. And neither are you." Masai and the other 2 showed looks of great resolve as they sprinted with everything they had even when their legs were beseeching for rest. After everything they went through, the only thing keeping them standing was their adrenaline and hope that the borders were just around the corner. While they recognized that no help awaited them behind the borders of the forest, they knew that the spiders must have been ordered to remain in the vicinity of the forest. They weren't certain about it, but it was their only salvation. Alas, in this new, cruel, and merciless era, life rarely smiled upon the weak. "Is that? No, it can't be." Mantis was the first to come to a full stop the moment his illumination strips landed on the massive network of stinky liquid, stretching for as long as his eyes could see in the dark. "We are so doomed," Masai murmured with a despairing smile as he stood next to Mantis. His ears picked up on the terrifying rustling sounds of spiders behind them. "We can't even burn out a path. We have wasted all of our totems." Their situation could only be described by the infamous quote by Tariq Ibn Ziyad: "The sea is behind you and the enemy is in front." Screw this, I've tried my best to be the hero. They are unsavable, and the authorities will see it once an investigation launches. While his party already lost hope, knowing that the only way to get past the web was to burn it with their assault totems, Mantis wasn't in the same boat as them. If he wanted, he could easily survive by using a trump card that no one knew of. He just didn't want to ditch them so fast and be held accountable back in the city. Do what you have to do, but make it seem like you truly tried your best until the very end. Tina backed him up inwardly. Smart. Mantis turned to face the incoming spider's army and extended his weapon at them with a stern expression. "As your leader, it's my duty to give it my all and protect you until my dying breath. Run alongside the web and try to summon your mounts. I will use everything in my powers to buy you time." "Mantis!" Masai and the rest of the squad were left stunned for a moment, not expecting such a heroic action from him. As daywalkers, they were used to everyone being selfish and seeking their own benefits. It was like the moment a daywalker was born, he would start prioritizing only himself and his contracted nightcrawler. It was an understandable development when considering their partnership would last for a lifetime unless they reached their defined goal. "Stop admiring me and go." Mantis yelled one last time and then charged toward the incoming wall of spiders with his hand inside his backpack. The moment he gripped his tramp card, which was in the shape of a peculiar wooden symbol, he started murmuring the incantation under his breath. But, just as he reached the last part, a sudden lethargic voice resounded near his ear akin to being hand-delivered by the wind. "I suggest you stand back." "Is that?" Mantis knitted his eyebrows in confusion, recognizing the voice to belong to the smoker guard standing at the outpost gate. His deadpan voice was stuck in his mind after he checked his giant army's IDs one by one. Before he could think too much about this development, the same voice echoed around the area. "Zephyrian wind arts, roaring tornado." Whoosh! Out of nowhere, a powerful wind draft manifested hundreds of meters away from Mantis and turned into a gigantic tornado, raising anything in its path. Mantis and the rest of his squad were left gaping at the sight of the terrifying spider's army hurled into the sky, devoured by the charging tornado. If it wasn't for the trees, dirt, and other picked-up objects, they wouldn't even be able to see the tornado under this moonless night. In a few moments at best, the roaring tornado died out, and everything it ate was dropped from hundreds of meters, killing any surviving spiders. Don't go anywhere. The rescue squads are on the way. Hearing the same lethargic voice from above, everyone lifted their heads and saw only a small smoke cloud left behind. Mantis returned to his squad, and after trading a few dazed glances, one of them finally stuttered, "Zephyrian wind arts. Only one man is infamous for such unique arts. It's definitely him. It's Sir Feng." Masai laughed loudly in excitement. "We are saved." Sir Feng earned a massive following in Heliodor's region, as he was considered almost a superstar. All due to him being one of the few youngest daywalkers to become a solar-bound daywalker at the mere age of 23. Solar-bound daywalkers had managed to successfully evolve their night crawlers to Tier 5, which was more than enough to earn them a seat at the big boys table in Heliodor's region. Alas, a decade later, Sir Feng was still stuck at the same stage, which had brought down his hype levels immensely. The once believed a generational talent that would have helped Heliodor's region advance and compete against much more powerful regions was nowhere near his prime glory. No one knew what happened exactly for such a dramatic fall of grace to occur, but he was still well respected among the commoners and daywalkers alike. "I can't believe it." Sir Feng was working as an undercover outpost guard? Mantis murmured. Did he know about this trap beforehand? "Who cares? Now he is here. Nothing will touch us. Not even the Lurker Queen. So, how about we go farm the spider's crystallized seeds?" Masai grinned as he looked at the depth of the forest. Upon hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up, and their tiredness disappeared immediately. Even their wounds didn't hurt anymore. "Let's go quickly before the rescuers arrive and collect them." Mantis turned around and was the first to sprint towards the tornado's destructive aftermath. "Mantis, for what you did back there, I will give you 50% of all crystallized seeds I collect." "Me too. I seriously owe you my life. I will relay everything to our agency and recommend you for this year's promotion to a senior captain's position." "Haha, you have my vote too, and my friends' votes." "You guys, I just did what any captain will do." As they kept admiring and glazing Mantis, all he could do was laugh it off and act humble. If they knew that he was planning on ditching them from the very beginning, their reaction would have been totally different. Hee hee. They weren't lying when they said that good karma finds good people. Mantis grinned cheerily, enjoying their attention and blessings. All Tina could do was roll her eyes at his shamelessness, realizing day by day that some humans were just as bad as nightcrawlers, if not worse. The fact that Mantis, Masai, and the others' first idea after surviving this ordeal wasn't to check on the rest of the daywalkers, but to satisfy their greed was enough proof of their innate depravity. Even if they do have no energy to fight or move, they could have at least shown some worry for the others, but no, their faces displayed nothing but utter glee as they kept farming the hundreds of spiders' crystallized seeds. What's worse, every time Feng found some survivors and saved them, they acted in the same manner. Feng saw their actions and seemed unbothered, already used to much worse displays of corruption for both humans and nightcrawlers. He had already accepted one solid fact. Once a human hung around with a nightcrawler for too long, even if he was one of the kindest and purest beings in the world, he was bound to be twisted sooner or later. As they say, one's character was seen by the surrounding entourage. What would one expect from daywalkers to become when their souls get linked with ruthless and evil beings at a young age? An age when they were most impressionable. For now, Feng focused on finding as many survivors as possible, and specifically Levi. He knew that Levi had gone a day earlier with Shia, which drove him to head into the center of the forest. When he arrived at the ruined Shadow Castle nest, his piercing dark eye spotted a tiny gleam on top of the umbrella shaft. He swiftly appeared on top of the shaft and reached out with his hand, picking up the silver jamming device. As expected, the signal was being jammed. He thought as he scanned it for a moment and then placed it in his pocket. "You won't deactivate it?" Mao inquired from on top of his shoulder. "No, it's too bothersome." Feng replied expressionlessly. "Figured so." Mao chuckled, anticipating his answer. She knew that her partner hated nothing more than his peace being disturbed by meaningless chatter or bureaucracy. If he were to turn off the device, his neural lens would be assaulted by hundreds of messages, if not more, after calling a purple emergency. He preferred dealing with this matter on his own terms instead of listening to their meaningless orders. If he was one for respecting orders, he wouldn't have been sent to this outpost as a disciplinary punishment. Mao, do you hear that? Suddenly, Feng Ling's ears picked up on a peculiar faint noise in the distance. As a wind specialist, he was able to command the wind to highlight any strange noises in a massive radius. He used this innate ability to locate the alive daywalkers as their battles were making too much noise relative to the silence in the forest. Yes, it resembles the noise of trees falling down. Mao replied, her ears twitching. With no more questions asked, Feng Ling chased after the faint noise until everything suddenly went silent. Even the creepy, rustling noise of spiders disappeared, puzzling Feng Ling and his partner. Something weird going on. Feng Ling narrowed his eyes and continued on the path of the last noise he heard. A couple of minutes later, he came to a sudden halt, his eyes landing on a shimmering dome of light amidst a horde of spider corpses. Grade A solar dome. Must be belonging to Morningstar's daughter. Mao remarked. Feng Ling nodded as he looked deeper, finding the fallen Shia's party within it. Soon, he appeared next to the barrier and scanned everyone's vitals with a single glance. When he confirmed that all of them had steady heartbeats and no life-threatening injuries, he let out a sigh of relief. He couldn't care less about Shia and the other daywalkers, as he firmly believed that daywalkers had a responsibility to protect themselves at all times. But Levi and Arthur were still helpless civilians. Plus, he kind of had a sensitive side for kids who lost their parents at an early age. Poor cuties. They must have passed out from exhaustion. Mao commentated. Feng Ling agreed and left them be, knowing that it was best to remain within the solar dome since it was healing their wounds and helping them recover faster. As he looked around him and noticed Nelvest's corpse lying under a tree, he blinked next to him and kicked the tree away. When he saw how he died, his pupils and mouths thinned in bafflement. Mao jumped on top of Nelvest's stomach and removed his hands from his neck easily. Seeing the tight marks and shattered neck bone made her exclaim, "He must be a Tier 3 nightcrawler, yet he really killed himself," and his expression screams of not knowing why. "Is it the queen spider?" Feng Ling asked, knowing that it was too far-fetched. "Impossible. Queen spiders will never kill their own children unless their survival is threatened, and they were ordered to." Mao tapped on Nelvest's chest. As for him, only a powerful mind control ability, or Tier 7 and above Nightcrawler's authority, is high enough to make him kill himself. "Are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. The clues are." Mao replied with a stern tone as she returned on top of his shoulder. "We should move with caution. A monster might be hidden in the forest. I doubt he is still around if there is truly one." Feng Ling shook his head, understanding that if a Tier 7 Nightcrawler were still in the forest, they wouldn't be chatting. The fact that only spiders and nightcrawlers had self-inflicted wounds implies that the target might be the Lurker Spider Queen, Feng Ling said. "You mean she's already dead?" Mao asked. "We are about to find out." Feng Ling relied on the same innate ability to find out the path leading to the nest, understanding that this many spiders popping out in the middle of the forest entailed one thing: a massive underground network. Within moments, he caught a faint breeze leading into the underground. Following it from the surface, Feng Ling soon found himself several kilometers away from the forest. "It's here." Feng Ling tapped his feet on the hardened ground while looking around him, seeing nothing but a desolate wasteland and no entrance to the underground. "Are you going to dig a path?" "Yes. I am down to stretch my limbs," Mao said as she stretched above his shoulder, purring cutely. Then, she transformed into the black saber, landing on Feng Ling's hand. Feng Ling closed his eyes and released a cold exhale as he tightened his grasp on the saber. While his eyes were closed, the sight before him was of many windy auras connected tens of meters under his feet, creating a massive, chaotic underground space. Any disturbance to the wind appeared as a dark area, allowing him to see what was going on underneath, even if it wasn't perfect. When the entire underground cave was painted in his mind, he couldn't help but knit his eyebrows in confusion. What? Check for yourself. Mao tapped into his wind vision and found out that the anticipated scene of hundreds of spiders moving around was nowhere to be found. It was deathly silent with no movement whatsoever. Don't tell me. Feng Ling's response came as an action. He pointed the tip of the saber on the ground and then murmured, "Zephyrian wind arts, piercing tornado." Whoosh! The still wind gathered tightly around his saber, swirling at the tip with precise control until it began to emit a faint glow. The excess wind funneled toward the hilt, forming a small but fierce tornado. Feng Ling leapt into the air and positioned himself like a spear, letting the wind surge around his body as he spun rapidly. In a flash, the saber drilled into the ground, cutting through everything in its path until he burst out on the other side. Without hesitation, he unleashed the full force of the swirling tornado he'd built up. Boom! The wind exploded into a thunderous shockwave, pushing away everything and anything around him. Only then did Feng Ling's eyes scan around with great vigilance, anticipating an attack from the Spider Queen. However, when his eyes saw the scene before him, they couldn't help but widen in shock. What the? Even Mao's slits enlarged from the saber in disbelief. Their reaction was understandable before the ludicrousness they were witnessing. The terrifying lurker Spider Queen that would make anyone piss their pants in fright from a single glance was sliced up in pieces and hung from her own web. The head, the torso, the abdomen, the limbs. Everything was hung up by a singular string of web in various positions, and each cut was clean like it was made by an artistic surgeon. As for its children, they were nowhere to be found. Only small stains of blood were seen marked on the walls and the ground around their mother. How terrifying! A Tier 5 lurker getting dealt with like this. Mao muttered. There were no signs of fight, just a pure one-handed slaughter. Slaughter? Feng Ling shook his head as he flew to the bottom of the cave, standing in front of this horrifying artistic work. The moment he faced it with Mao from the bottom, his eyes reflected a new scene. The hung-up limbs and other body parts lined up perfectly, creating an image of a flipped middle finger with the queen's head as the tip of the middle finger. As Feng Ling and Mao gazed at the horror painted on the queen spider's 8 eyes, they could only imagine what kind of beast she faced. This is nothing but a playful gag to him, Feng Ling uttered, his voice calm, but carried a faint hint of dread. Even he realized that maybe it was for the best to never meet this monster. The next morning, inside a luxurious clean suite with glass windows peeking over Tamara's settlement, Levi was lying on a comfortable hospital bed. He was fully covered. Only his head was being bathed under the warm rays of sunlight. Meanwhile, Arthur was sleeping on a nearby couch, looking as uncomfortable as one could be. One leg was on the ground, another touching the wall, and half of his chest was spilling over the couch. Yet, he was still snoring soundly. "Wake up! It's morning. We are wasting precious sunlight." "Levi, wake your ass up. You have been sleeping for 14 hours straight." "Levi, Leate." While Ashcrow was shouting at the top of his lungs in Levi's mind, he was living in another stratosphere with the biggest adorable smile on his face. At first sight, everyone could guess that he was having a very nice dream. Those kinds of dreams that no one want to wake up from. For an entire decade of being under constant harassment from nightcrawlers, this was the very first time Levi hadn't dreamt of a nightmare. All due to Ashcrow protecting his dream from the invasion of any nightcrawler. Levi had forgotten about everything in the real world and lived in a dream, where he was playing tag in the backyard with his little brother and father, while his mother was cooking them a warm meal in the kitchen. The sky was blue, the sun was gentle, and life seemed quite simple. Just any other common family, nothing special, nothing great. Just a day-to-day life of an average family. Yet this was Levi's eternal dream life. A life he would give everything to have again. He wouldn't mind even if he was still blind. In his heart, The darkness would feel less sufferable if he had the company and love of his parents. Whatever a difficult journey awaits him, might as well let him start it with what was stolen from him. As Ashcrowl gazed at Levi's peacefulness and saw what kind of dream he had, he didn't let his assholeness get the best of him for the first time. He could easily ruin his dream and wake him up, but he ended up closing his eye and leaving him be. Fortunately, Levi's biological clock acted up the moment the clock hit 8 a.m. The dream collapsed against his will, and his conscience was returning to gaze at the infinite darkness. He was up, but no one could ever tell when he had scorch marks for eyes. Levi slowly sat up on the bed, sensing that it was different than the one in his home. His senses were alerted, and he started reaching out with his hands, touching everything in sight. When he touched the plastic tube attached to his wrist and the metallic short railing at the sides of the bed, he knew that he was in a hospital. Soon, memories flooded his mind of everything that happened in the harrowing forest, leaving him overwhelmed for a few moments. Then, he touched his face and murmured, "Am I really a daywalker?" If you're still doubtful, reach out with your mind to your abdomen and try to feel your seed, Ashcrowl said with a faint smirk while floating in his line of spiritual sight. Yet, Levi didn't even hear what he said. He kept looking at him in a daze for a couple of seconds, sizing him up and down. Then, he broke the silence with a faint crackle that kept growing in volume until he was laughing his ass off while pointing at Ashcrowl. His reaction was understandable when Ashcrowl's creepy and terrifying appearance was nowhere to be seen. He was turned into a single floating eye with two small wings on its back and tiny cute feet on the bottom. His gray leathery skin was changed to black fur, and his singular horrific slit transformed into 3 differently colored slits crossing on the center. One was golden, one was black, and the last one was red. He was as cute as Nightcrawler could be. Little F asterisk her. I knew I should have ruined your dream. Ashcrowl's single eyelid twitched in irritation, but it only made him look cuter. Ha 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 ha. I can't. Just keep laughing. We will see if you will laugh when I show you your tattoo. Ashcrowl smirked. Levi ignored what he said and kept chuckling, waiting for this day for a very, very long time. He was bullied by Ashcrowl daily, always being his #1 hater. It was finally time for his payback, and Levi wasn't going to hold back. You look like a disabled peanut when you blink. He roasted him. Haha, real funny. Ashcrowl sneered annoyedly. Wait, I have a better one. Levi chuckled. Those wings aren't for flying. They're just there to distract from the rest of you. Ashcrowl was silenced, wanting to laugh, but it was at his own expense. Oh, I have another one. You look like a fuzzy tennis ball with an identity crisis. Levi laughed while slapping the bed. If he had eyes, tears would already be pouring akin to Niagara Falls. Done yet? Please, just one more. No, please, I promise it's good. How annoying, fine. Seeing his beseeching, excited expression, Ashcrowl waved his wing akin to a hand, gesturing for him to go for it. You're the bat version of a work in progress, except the progress stopped halfway. Ha ha ha. Okay, that's a good one, I give you that. Ashcrowl chuckled, incapable of keeping it serious anymore. Just what happened to you? Levi asked amidst his dying laughter. This is my starting Tier 1 appearance. Unlike most night crawlers, my end appearance depends on the chosen evolutionary path. Ashcrowl clarified casually while sitting on top of Levi's shoulder. In other words, the version Levi always interacted with wasn't his permanent appearance. It might be his original appearance, but still could be altered. Now that he was restarting his evolutionary journey again, he could end up looking vastly different or quite similar, depending on Levi's choices. Did it really have to be this damn cute? Both of us will get bullied now. Levi chuckled. A blind kid contracted with a singular I bat. 2 entities, and still we are 3 eyes short. How ironic. Don't worry. 1 eye is all we need to steamroll them. Ashcrowl smirked. I hope so. Levi's expression suddenly turned serious as he asked telepathically, what happened after I went down? Is my brother okay? He is fine. Ashcrowl shared. He is sleeping on the couch nearby. Good, leave him be. He sighed in relief. After everything that happened, he was just glad that both of them made it out alive. This situation had taught him a grave lesson that just because he planned ahead, it didn't mean that everything would go based on the script, especially when the wastelands were involved. What about the others? How were we saved? They must have already seen the ink stamp on my body. Levi frowned. They must be waiting for me to wake up and question me about the contract details. Your friends are fine, and no one has seen your ink tattoo. Ashkral scoffed. Do you think this is an amateur hour? I've already hidden your tattoo. For real? That's possible. Levi raised an eyebrow in surprise. He understood that daywalkers/sleepwalkers' ink tattoos were permanent ink marks that could be removed only once the contract term concluded. Before I was stripped of my powers, I used them to cast a permanent veil on it. The only way to bring it to light is to use an incantation. Good thinking. Levi nodded in appreciation. I am sure the authorities are preparing to investigate and interrogate every single one of us. The death toll of daywalkers is just too much. As Levi mentioned, all of the daywalkers saved in the harrowing forest were placed in this hospital, awaiting the dust to settle before starting the investigation. When it came to such incidents, it was almost guaranteed that a sleepwalker or a fallen daywalker to be involved. The fact that a jamming device was found made it even more certain. What's the incantation, and where did you ink the tattoo exactly? Levi returned to the inked tattoo subject after touching his entire body and failing to feel its presence. Every person had the tattoo inked in a different place on their bodies, depending on their choice. But since Levi's integration experience was vastly different and filled with agony, the last thing on his mind was the tattoo's placement. Ashkral told him about the incantation, which wasn't anything complicated or long. As for its placement, he merely showed his known mischievous grin. What did you do? Levi felt his blood turn cold at Ashkral's silence. Seeing that he wasn't answering, Levi swiftly murmured the incantation. By ink and skin, reveal within, let hidden marks now shine again. The moment he finished, he felt a sudden burning sensation right above his butt cheeks. No, you wouldn't. Levi reached out with a shaking hand towards his tailbone with a mortified expression. Alas, against his hopes, his fingers caressed the cold black ink. You gave me a tramp stamp. Levi covered his ashamed face with one hand while continuing to feel the tattoo with the other. You dirty bastard, this is too much. What are you talking about? That's the finest location known in our shadow dimension. Ashkral showed a wronged look. Only royalties have the right to tattoo their tailbone. Really? F***ck no. That's a tramp stamp through and through. Ashkral laughed mockingly, getting his revenge over the previous roasts. Levi swiftly used the incantation to hide the tattoo, not wanting to think about it for even another second. Out of sight, out of mind. It's fine. No one will see it. Levi sighed helplessly. Although Levi's plan was sound, and he seemed confident in it, Jamal was still ordered to use his spiritual arrow to scout around them every once in a while. After all, Mantis wasn't the only one in the forest. Fortunately, no one appeared in his arrow's field of vision. When he relayed the news, Shia ordered everyone to start searching the area for natural treasures again. She still hadn't lost hope, even when the center of the forest turned out to be a bust. Since the forest was quite humongous with hills, lakes, and rivers, it would be hard to meet Shia's party randomly, although Mantis' party had more than 100 daywalkers. In addition, everyone was too focused on finding natural treasures to bother themselves with antagonizing Shia's party. Mantis couldn't make such an order when the contract details involved only finding the treasures. Thus, hours went by in peace, and before long, the sun was showering everyone with its final rays of light. Prepare your nightwear straps and light sticks. Mantis ordered with an irritated look, knowing that it was near impossible to find Shia anymore unless they dropped everything and completely focused on her. As the night veil fell over the forest and the moon cast its gentle light from the slight gaps of the clouds, only small dots of light were seen spread out across the forest. Sometime later, is it just me, or is the forest somewhat too peaceful? Masai murmured while looking around him, not spotting a single roaming nightcrawler. Are you doubting my agency's capabilities? Mantis frowned coldly. You think we're some kind of second-rated agency that doesn't clear the any. Scritch, scritch. Suddenly, a faint rustling noise echoed in everyone's ears akin to tiny legs skittering over dried leaves. Sheesh. Mantis silenced everyone with a finger near his mouth and leaned closer to the noise. As he focused on it, it started to get louder and louder until it resounded akin to the thundering steps of 1,000 army. Then they appeared a sea of horrific big spiders charging in their direction, covering their entire field of sight. Rue, run. Are you absolutely petrified? Mantis let out a high-pitched scream while sprinting at the top of his speed in the opposite direction of the spiders. What the hell? How come there are so many spiders? Masai and the rest of the squad didn't linger for even a moment as they took off after Mantis while summoning their signature weapons. All of them shared similar expressions: horror, disbelief, and confusion. Unfortunately, no one was there to clarify their questions, as this exact scenario was repeating across the entire forest. Meanwhile, Shia's party was still working tirelessly, turning everything upside down, but to no avail. I'm starting to think that those flowers have gone extinct. Arthur wiped his forehead in annoyance. They're called treasures for a reason, Arthie. If they were. Levi's smile suddenly turned upside down after spotting a bizarre moving spiritual wave at a rapid speed. When he focused hard on it, he finally managed to see some distinctive features of spiders. He stood up immediately and warned with a solemn tone, "An uncanny number of spiders are approaching us. We have to leave now." Wait, what? Spiders? It can't be. This region isn't known to harbor any spider archetype. Sergio and Jamal commentated in confusion, but Levi had no plans to explain the situation. He called for his brother, and Arthur swiftly took hold of him, giving him a piggyback. Then he sprinted in the opposite direction, not waiting for anyone to react. When sh*T hit the fan, the Larson brothers only cared about protecting each other. After Shia saw his extreme reaction and knew that he wasn't the type to mess around, she swiftly summoned her weapon and took off after them. This left Jamal and Sergio to glance at each other in a daze for a few seconds. But then, their ears picked up on the creepy, rustling sound, an unfamiliar noise in a silent forest. Wait for us. Scared shitless, they dropped everything and chased after their party, regrouping in no time. Ard, no, save me. Before Shia could ask Levi about what he saw in detail, a distant symphony of cries and screams engulfed the forest, sending chills coursing down everyone's spines. What's going on? Arthur asked, agitated. How the F***CK will I know? Shia replied with a grim look while glancing behind her, noticing thousands of crimson dots through the darkness. They were too close to their comfort. Meanwhile, many thoughts were roaming through Levi's mind, trying his best to keep his cool in such a dangerous situation. As he listened to the agonizing and despairing screams echoing across the forest, he understood that it was impossible for the timing to be this perfect, that all of them were ambushed at once. This made him realize that the spiders were following orders and that this entire ambush was organized by an intelligent entity. In public records, the harrowing Forest Shadow Castle nest was under the leadership of a nightcrawler from the Groot Goat archetype, which meant most of the nightcrawlers under him should be of a similar archetype for easier control. Levi understood that nightcrawlers respected each other's authority following two options. Either they were of the same archetype, or the tier difference was beyond 3. In simpler terms, a Tier 4 nightcrawler could command with absolute authority a Tier 1 nightcrawler of any species. But if they were of the same species, just being 2 tiers higher would give them the same absolute authority. That's why most nightcrawlers' nests were usually filled with similar archetypes for easier management. This means those spiders didn't belong to the nest and are under a whole different entity. In other words, Levi's skin felt cold all of a sudden after it finally hit him. We are being hunted by a lurker spider queen. Even Levi, who was almost always composed and fearless, couldn't help but feel dread creeping up on his heart. He had read that lurker nightcrawlers were minimum tier 5, since they needed to be powerful to protect themselves from other nightcrawlers too. To be hunted by a rogue tier 5 nightcrawler? This was scarier than going on an expedition. "We have to leave the forest now," he shouted, his face as pale as a sheet of paper. "Did you find something?" Shia frowned. Just as Levi was about to give her a brief version of his findings, his spiritual vision detected a pincer assault of another wave of spiders, coming from the front and sides. It was like everywhere he looked, the only thing in his field of vision was disorganized, shadowy spiritual waves. Though the numbers varied extensively. "We are surrounded. Head east and prepare for battle." Hearing Levi's orders, Arthur didn't even question his brother. He changed his direction abruptly, using a boulder to kick off it, and launched himself with minimized momentum loss. Such a maneuver would have ruined any normal person's knees. But Arthur's muscles weren't purely for strength purposes, as he was extremely flexible too. Shia and the others swiftly caught up to them and took the lead, forming the same battle formation with the Larson brothers in the center. The Nightcrawlers were simply carriers, which forced them to seek out sunlight to evolve, but as citizens of the Shadow Dimension, direct sunlight was their ultimate enemy. A conundrum that could be solved only through possessing a human or another entity capable of absorbing direct sunlight. On the other hand, we have Ashkral and his F***Ketup 3 body problem seed. He didn't want to just help one seed grow to its final form, but all 3 seeds together, which would cause Levi to end up with 3 trees within his body. All those trees had a will of their own, and from his explanation, they didn't like sharing one bit. I kind of get the gist of it. Levi held his chin thoughtfully. All early Daywalker ranks are separated into 3 stages: first, second, and third. To reach the first stage, one needs to hit a 5% target, and as a reward, we obtain the ability to shapeshift the Nightcrawler into a permanent weapon and unlock the first random innate ability of the Nightcrawler. If I am using 3 seeds, and each seed allows me to travel on a different evolutionary path, does that mean I need to hit the 5% target on each path to obtain 3 different abilities and 3 different weapon variants? Yes, you catch on quick. Ashkral nodded. You will be much slower than others when it comes to reaching the 3rd stage and evolving me, but you will be obtaining 3 times the rewards on each rank. Also, the Daywalkers had 2 weapon choices, one unlocked at the start, and the other called Awakened Weapon in the middle of the evolutionary path. Ashkral smirked. My seeds are different. You will have 3 weapon choices, one at the start, one in the middle, and one near the end. Since you have 3 seeds, it means you will possess 9 weapon variations at your peak. No one in the history of Daywalkers could reach this number. Levi was left dumbfounded at the insane number of variations, knowing that just possessing 3 weapon variation was too much to ask for. After all, each weapon needed to be mastered as it defined a unique fighting style that depended on the unlocked innate abilities and especially the learned arts techniques. 9 variations? It was a bit overwhelming. Don't overthink it, boy. You should feel delighted if you unlock your first awakened weapons. Ashkral said. Levi felt his heart skip a beat, realizing that if he were to unlock his awakened weapons, it implied that he had already helped the seeds grow into young trees. At that time, he would have 3 young trees, and he could already imagine the shambles of roots and branches entangled. This sounds like it's going to be an agonizing experience. Levi smiled wryly. Only if you allow it to be. Ashkral cheered him on. I will help you in the early stages, but as we reach the middle, we will have to figure out a solution to deal with the 3-body problem and commit to it. Is this how your past partners have done things? Levi asked. How far did they reach? My latest partner made it to Warden Daywalker and was stuck in it for more than a decade. In the end, he couldn't deal with the chronic pain of the young tree's roots and killed himself. Levi went quiet for a second and then asked, Isn't Warden Daywalker the 4th rank? Yes. You are telling me your best partner out of the dozens reached his limit at the 4th rank? Yes. He committed suicide from the chronic pain? Yes. Levi lifted his head and remained staring at the infinite darkness in silence. After a few moments, he inquired with a bitter smile, How screwed am I? While objectively 99%, Ashkral showed an encouraging smile. But for some reason, I feel we will pull it off. You just have to remain positive and think of it as you having a whole 1% to beat the odds. Are you King with me? Levi glared at him in vexation, realizing that he might have simply prolonged his death sentence.